Chapter 128. 5,000 acres of potatoes were harvested. On average, 250 kilograms of potatoes were harvested per acre. After counting, they had harvested a total of 1,250 tons of potatoes. The potatoes were enough to last them for a whole year. Other than that, the Northgard castle also stored a large amount of dried meat and salted fish. Even the spotted antelope was growing well. The Northgard castle was basically self-sufficient now. The harvest festival was over, and the weather in the Northgard castle was getting colder. It was winter now. In order to prepare for the winter, the construction of the territory had slowed down. More slaves and refugees were sent to cut down trees to make charcoal and other supplies for the winter. Sulen was watching Hathaway test a few bottles of potions in her lab. To be honest, he had forgotten about these potions since he found them in the ruins last time. Actually, it was the author who forgot about them. He found them when he was processing the Cryopterus meat. He wanted to show them to Hathaway so she could identify what kind of potion it was and whether it could still be used. Hathaway snapped her fingers and controlled the burette with the wizard's hand. She dripped a few drops of liquid into a measuring cylinder filled with a blue solution. She then shook the liquid evenly. Soon, the liquid in the cylinder underwent some strange changes. Hathaway put down the measuring cylinder and pointed at a bottle of potion. "I'm in luck. This bottle of potion is well preserved. The potion's effect is still intact." "What about the other potions?" Sulen asked. "The rest of the potions are either expired or have lost their effect. They can't be used anymore." "Of course, you can try if you want to poison someone to death," Hathaway said as she resealed the potion and handed it to Sulen. Sulen took the bottle of potion. The red liquid in the crystal bottle bumped against the surface of the bottle and flashed from time to time. It looked a little strange. "What's this potion for?" "It's a bloodline potion. If the right person uses it, he or she will have the corresponding bloodline and become a bloodline warlock." Hathaway poured the rest of the potions into a special container. She then added another type of potion. After a few potions were mixed, it turned into a murky solution. "Bloodline potion? Are you saying that this potion can turn an ordinary person into a warlock?" Sulen asked in surprise. "Hua." Hathaway continued to say, "Don't be happy too early. Although the bloodline potion can allow an ordinary person to become a bloodline warlock, there are prerequisites." "What conditions?" "If the bloodline potion is given to an ordinary person, then the best time to use it is between the ages of 10 to 12, and the latest can't be over 16, because it takes more than a year for the bloodline potion to be fully integrated, and to become a warlock, one must awaken the bloodline before the age of 18. "What if the user is not an ordinary person?" Sulen waved the potion in his hand. "If the user is a wizard or a wizard apprentice, the age limit can be extended to 30 years old. If the user is a knight, it can be extended to 20 years old." Hathaway combed her hair and continued, "But I don't recommend using this bloodline potion." "What's wrong with this bloodline potion?" "There are many types of bloodline potions, and each one has a different potential. The best ones are of course the bloodline potions of high-grade creatures such as dragons. This bloodline potion uses the blood of a mid-grade demon claw, so its potential is limited. Also, demon warlocks are not popular in the main material world. In fact, demon warlocks were not as simple as being unpopular. Because of the integration of the demon bloodline, these people would be constantly influenced by the will of the abyss. The stronger they were, the deeper this influence would be. In the end, they would fall into the abyss and become a real demon. Of course, there were also people in this world who wanted to become demons. After all, there were many people, and there were all kinds of weirdos. After all, after becoming a demon, one's lifespan and strength would be greatly increased. According to the evolution of demons, as long as they didn't die, they could continue to evolve. Even becoming a demon lord was not impossible. Of course, the premise was that they didn't die. To be honest, demons advanced very quickly, especially the low-grade ones. These demons killed each other, and as long as they survived, they could quickly advance. There was no specific conclusion as to how long a demon's lifespan was, but one thing was certain. So far, not a single demon had lived to the end of their lives. Su-Len didn't plan to use this potion, but that didn't mean it was useless. For example, he could create a small villain boss for himself to gain experience. A mid-grade demon would give tens of thousands of experience. If he was lucky, he could directly level up. Su-Len casually threw the potion into his storage space and left the laboratory. Hathaway was busy during this time. There were a lot of materials that she needed to deal with. It was not easy to make suitable magic equipment with the materials of 6 frost dragons. Monsignor, Mr. Zeon has returned with the caravan. There are 2 centaur messengers and a team of centaur warriors. Just as Su-Len was about to go to the training ground, a member of the security team hurried over to report. Take the team of centaur warriors to a residential area outside the town. Prepare some food for them and let them rest there. Be careful not to let anyone disturb them. Centaur messengers, take them to the guest hall. Let Chris take care of them on my behalf. I'll be there soon. Su-Len immediately ordered someone to make the arrangements. After greeting Hathaway, Su-Len rushed to the castle. After changing into a set of luxurious clothes, he went to see the centaur messengers. To be honest, although Su-Len had been in this world for a long time, this was the first time he had seen centaurs. The 2 centaur messengers were a male and a female. They had human facial features and green hair. The female centaur had a beautiful braid with some gemstones hanging from it. Her facial features were also very delicate. The male centaur had a strong body and was at least 2.4 meters tall. The contours of his muscles were obvious. It was obvious that he was a powerful warrior. The 2 centaurs had elf-like pointed ears and golden eyes. It was said that this centaur tribe had a part of the bloodline of the Dryads. This could be seen from their ears. The 2 centaurs in front of him wore white linen robes. The hem of the robes was very wide. Half of the robes fell down their bodies while the other half was draped over their backs. The 2 centaurs were both maroon. Even from a human's point of view, they were very handsome and beautiful. Su-Len felt a surge of elemental energy from the female centaur. It was different from the elemental energy of wizards. This energy had a dignified aura. Su-Len guessed that the female centaur was most likely a priestess. The centaur tribe was very widespread. They also believed in different gods. Some believed in the god of storms, while others believed in the goddess of nature and Mother Earth. It was said that the earliest centaurs had a part of the bloodline of the gods. Just like the human world, centaurs also had nobles and commoners. Normal centaurs had average intelligence and bad tempers. They were not easy to get along with. However, the noble centaurs were very intelligent. They had a wealth of knowledge and also had a priestess. The 2 messengers in front of him were clearly centaur nobles. Chapter 129. When Su-Len came back, he saw a group of centaur warriors. They were all equipped with spears and bows. They were tall and strong, and they were even stronger than the barbarians that Su-Len saw the first time. It was clear that the centaur tribe valued Su-Len very much. No, it should be said that they valued this trade very much. Chris had already arranged for people to prepare a sumptuous meal. Because it was noon, there were many fruits and all kinds of meat on the table. The chefs had also specially roasted a whole lamb with some cumin sprinkled on it. The smell of it was very appetizing. Su-Len also asked people to prepare desserts and ice cream. He also prepared 2 bottles of high-quality rum. Because of the centaur's body structure, Su-Len did not prepare chairs for them. Instead, he prepared thick and soft cushions. The 2 centaurs were very satisfied with this arrangement. Hello, human lord. I am Mission from the Samar centaur tribe. This is my brother Kane. Su-Len did not expect the centaur tribe's messenger to be led by Mission, a female centaur. Mission was very interested in this human lord. When she entered the town, she saw the ogre wizard's head and Cryopteris' head hanging on the city wall. The centaurs were very clear about the strength of the ogre tribe, and the Cryopteris' head made her turn pale with fright. The powerful Cryopterus had the ability to fly. Not many people in this wasteland were willing to provoke them. Now that their heads were hanging on the city wall, she had to be careful and respectful. Sulen, Lord of the Northern Castle. Sulen said with a smile. He then gestured to the prepared banquet hall and said, I've prepared some things there. We can sit down and talk. Sulen had already noticed the small movements of the two centaurs. The centaur tribe's food was obviously not as good as the humans, let alone the food that was cooked by the halfling chefs. Therefore, after smelling the aroma of the food, the glutton in his stomach began to stir. When they heard Sulen's invitation, they immediately agreed. When they arrived at the banquet hall, the two centaurs were very satisfied with the food prepared by Sulen. The fruits were okay since they were all gathered from the wilderness, but the fruit salad with cream and honey made them forget to leave. There was also a dessert called ice cream. It was simply delicious. That roasted antelope was also not bad. After tasting the food, Mission and Cain let go of their reservations and began to taste all kinds of food. Lord Sulen, we are at war with the orc tribe in the north. We need a batch of weapons and food, and of course, wine. After finishing her meal, the beautiful mare finally remembered to talk about business. That's not a problem. I can sell them all to you. Sulen nodded. These were originally prepared for trade. He put down the wine glass and continued, but what are you going to use to trade? In the wastelands, Kinnar was basically not used for trade. After all, orcs, half-orcs, barbarians, centaurs, and half-elves rarely used Kinnar. Most of the time, they used the ancient method of bartering. In fact, even human caravans that came to the wastelands to trade mostly used bartering. We can use longbows, horses, and furs to trade. Of course, we can also use some gold or silver. Mission put down the ice cream in his hand and said, Gold and silver should be some raw ores. It seems like there are a lot of gold and silver mines in the wilderness. Sulen thought to himself. We don't need gold or silver for now. You can use horses and longbows to trade. Sulen had already planned to form a cavalry and archer team. Although he didn't have a cavalry commander's seal and didn't have the system bonuses, forming a cavalry team was not a problem. How many horses and longbows do you have? Sulen asked. 200 fine horses and 100 longbows, Mission said. We are going to trade for 200 sets of armor and 20 carriages of food. We also want 1 carriage of rum. 200 sets of armor, 20 carriages of food, and 1 carriage of rum. I have all these goods, but you don't have enough to trade. Sulen took a sip of his wine glass and said. The armor that the centaurs were talking about was not human armor. Due to their body structure, the centaur's armor had to be specially made. They had to link a human half armor with a horse's armor. This kind of armor was equivalent to the armor of a human heavy cavalry, so it would not be cheap. At the same time, food was very precious in the wilderness. 20 carriages of food was not a small number. The centaurs in front of them were asking for a sky-high price. Our horses are the best. They can support heavy armor and charge. Our longbows are also the best. If these things are transported to the human world, they will be popular goods. We think this price is reasonable. Mission said with a smile. You also know that it is to be transported to the human world. Sulen leaned back in his chair. The wine glass in his hand was shaking rhythmically. The amber wine swayed back and forth in the glass. But this is the wilderness. You are using the human world standards to set the price. You are being a hooligan. Sulen said with a smile. Miss Mission, I am very sincere about doing business with you, but I don't see any sincerity in you. Lord Sulen, how much do you think we should pay? Mihian wasn't surprised. She had always been in charge of trading with humans in the Samar tribe. Even if she was ignorant at first, she had been in contact with human merchants for a long time, so she had some negotiation skills. 300 horses and 300 bows, Sulen said directly. No, that's too much. 300 horses are fine, but not bows. Mission shook her head and refused. We are now at war with the orcs. We can only sell 100 bows. But we can sell you some slaves and gold. Don't you humans like gold? What slaves? How much gold are you willing to pay? Some orc captives. Mission continued. We can provide 200 orc laborers. They are much stronger than goblins, kobolds, and gnolls. Gold is 300 pounds according to your human standards. 100 pounds of gold. Sulan didn't expect the centaur tribe to be so rich. The level of smelting in this era was limited. The purity of gold was only about 91% of what it was in his previous world. A standard kinnar weighed about 5 grams. In addition to gold, there were also some other metals mixed in. 300 pounds of gold was equivalent to 30,000 kinnar. 200 orc laborers, 300 horses, 100 bows, and 300 pounds of gold. This is our first trade, so I will take a loss and agree. Sulan thought for a while and pretended to agree. Then I look forward to working with you. The beautiful little mare nodded excitedly. You are a good person. Looking at the little mare's innocent eyes, Sulan felt a little guilty. However, he quickly convinced himself. After all, the other people and the centaurs gave a much higher price. Compared to them, he was already very kind. Chapter 130. Both sides were very satisfied with this deal. After discussing the time and place of the deal, the atmosphere became very harmonious. The banquet became more and more lively. Frodo was very interested in the two centaurs. After Mission knew that the delicious food was Frodo's masterpiece, he very warmly invited Frodo to be a guest in the centaur tribe. However, Sulan stopped him. It wasn't easy to get a chef. How could he just let someone else take him away? After some discussion, Sulan also got some information about the centaur tribe and the orcs that were fighting against them. The Samar tribe had a population of more than 6,000, and more than 2,000 of them were warriors. The rest were women, children, the elderly, and the weak. Of course, this was only relative. In fact, the women of this tribe were also very strong. It could be said that every tribe was a soldier. If there was a crisis, the entire tribe would pick up their weapons. The centaur tribe also had priests. Sulan didn't know how many priests there were, but there were at least 3 of them. Compared to wizards, priests were more suitable for the battlefield. As long as they grasped the right timing, these priests with divine spells had the power to turn the tide of a battle. The armor that Sulan sold to the centaurs was not plate armor. After all, low-carbon steel armor was not cheap, and the centaur's body structure was not suitable for plate armor. Therefore, he sold them a type of chainmail. The blacksmith shop in Northtown Castle had a hydraulic forging machine, so it was very easy to make these iron armor leaves. These iron armor leaves were also twice as big as normal leaves, so it was even easier to make them. With a hammer strike, a piece of iron armor was produced. With the help of the blast furnace, they could make a few sets of iron armor in a day. After finishing all the food on the table, the two centaurs let out a satisfied burp. As a nomadic race, it was easy to imagine the diet of the centaurs. Most of the time, they would roast the food and sprinkle some salt on it, or add some wild vegetables to stew it. Sulan's food was all kinds of fried, steamed, and fried. There were also fruit salad and ice cream, which could be considered as luxurious desserts. It could be said that this was the best food they had ever eaten in their lives. After eating, Sulan began to talk with them. He wanted to get more information about this wasteland. I heard that you were fighting against the orcs. Sulan asked. Yes, it's an orc tribe. They want to invade our territory, Mission said. We have been at war with them for a long time, but with this batch of equipment, we are confident that we can drive them out of our pasture completely. How strong are those orcs? Sulan wanted to know the strength of the orcs. Their strength is not bad. Their individual strength is weaker than ours, but they have more people, and they have shamans. Mihian's expression was serious when he talked about the shamans. Obviously, he valued them a lot. Those bastards are using elemental power to destroy nature. This is blasphemy to Mother Earth. Mission said sternly. Su Luan had a general understanding of the conflict between the two sides. Most likely, both sides had set their sights on a piece of grassland, but in the end, neither side was willing to back down. The orcs had taken the initiative by relying on their advantage in numbers, but the centaurs refused. Coupled with the fact that the two tribes had different doctrines, it was even more difficult for the two sides to get along. Even a small matter could cause a fight, let alone a large piece of grassland. This was related to the future development and strength of the tribe. With a larger pasture, they could raise more livestock and feed more people. In a place like the wilderness, if you wanted to survive, you had to fight. Fight for pasture, fight for territory, and fight for more living space. Through Mission, Su Len also learned some information about the surrounding wasteland. There was a troll tribe to the north of the centaur tribe. Following the Red Sand River to the south, there was a swamp where some lizard tribes lived. The centaurs did not know any further places. In fact, the centaurs told Su Len that the tribes were all big tribes. In this wasteland, there were many smaller tribes. There were too many tribes, and no one knew when they were annexed, so no one knew how many tribes there were. After sending the centaur tribe's messenger away, it was already evening. The two sides agreed to come back to trade after a while. Su Len also needed a few days to prepare the armor. After this trade, Su Len would have 300 war horses and 100 longbows. He could also put the cavalry and archers on the agenda. When he arrived at the barracks, the recruits were still training. 20 archers were training their arm strength, and 20 spearmen were stabbing the scarecrows with wooden spears. Sheriff Harrison was also training the security team's soldiers. Harrison. Su Len waved at him. Harrison, who was in the middle of training, asked the squad leader to lead them to continue training, and then walked towards Su Len. Monsignor, you were looking for me? Yes, the centaurs will send a batch of horses in a few days. Pick 30 horses for the security team and teach them how to ride, Su Len said. Monsignor, don't worry. I will train them well. Harrison was very excited when he heard that he would be assigned 30 horses to the security team. Before this, the security team only had 2 horses, and they could only be used to send messages. Many times, they could not arrive in time to deal with emergencies. By the way, recruit some people from the refugees and train a cavalry, Su Len continued. Although many of the heroes in the territory knew how to ride, Harrison was the only one who could train cavalry. He was also the only one who had served in the army of Florence and knew how to train cavalry. Of course, he only knew how to train some beginner cavalry. It was impossible to train elite cavalry or heavy cavalry. Yes, Monsignor. Harrison saluted seriously. Okay, continue with the training. As long as you make enough contributions, I will give you rewards. Money, land, or a title. Su Len patted Harrison's shoulder, and then continued to tour the camp. Harrison, who had received Sullen's promise, was overjoyed. He became even more excited, and then trained the soldiers even more fiercely. Little bastards, did you not eat? You're so soft. Even those women are better than you. Tell me loudly, are you guys men? Yes. Louder, I can't hear you. Yes. Everyone roared. Then train with all your heart. Harrison roared. Look, this is what chopping is. Look at the bullsh asterisk T you guys are training. Today, everyone will do 500 more chopping, and you're not allowed to eat if you don't finish. Seeing the soldiers being tortured by Harrison, Su Len smiled in his heart, and then left the camp. Chapter 131. Cavalry training was not something that could be done overnight. Other than horses, the cavalry also needed to be equipped with all sorts of equipment, such as horseshoes and saddles. These were just the basics. Light cavalry did not need to prepare horse armor, but heavy cavalry needed a full set of horse armor. However, Su Len did not plan to train heavy cavalry for the time being. He had a group of strong barbarian warriors who could replace the heavy cavalry to a certain extent. Currently, the territory lacked light cavalry. Light cavalry could be used to scout, harass, sneak attack, and send messages. The weather was getting colder. When he woke up in the morning, there was already frost on the windows. Just yesterday, Su Len met another wandering hero in the tavern, Hunter. This was a small leader of a caravan. He used to do business in various places, so he knew the price of various goods. He was also familiar with the operations of a caravan. When Su Len invited him to join the caravan, the small leader agreed without hesitation. He then went to terminate his employment with the manager of the caravan. Su Len appointed him as the tax collector of the northern castle. He was in charge of collecting taxes from the caravans that came and went. Previously, Chris and Xian were in charge of this. Now, Barnes was in charge. However, he still had to report to Chris every day. Name, Barnes, loyalty, 82 occupation, merchant tax collector level, 5 strength, 6 dexterity, 7 spirit, 6 vitality, 6 charm, 7 command, 20 characteristics, talent appraisal, observation, listening, actor, trading, glib tongue, decent manners, gossip, shrewd. Merchant, he used to be a merchant. He used to do business in various places for a long time. This allowed him to know the price of various goods and the tricks that merchants use to evade taxes. Tax +1, skills, proficient in mathematics, proficient in law, basic swordsmanship, information gathering, intimidation, hidden compartment searching weapon proficiency, swordsmanship 60, archery 75, equestrian 83 evaluation. This is a qualified tax officer. Any attempt to evade taxes will be detected by him. You will have to pay him a fee every month. With the addition of a tax officer, the tax collection in the territory was much clearer. Under Hunter's influence, those who tried to evade taxes were punished. The rate of tax evasion was greatly reduced. Su Len could already foresee that the tax collection in the northern castle would increase again. As a matter of fact, the structure of the officials in the North Fortress was not logical at all. There was no one in charge of the mayor, the chief of the guards, the garrison officer, or the steward of the fortress. Chris was actually in charge of the mayor and the castle steward. As for the guard captain and the garrison officer, Johnson and Boulder were temporarily in charge. In reality, the two of them were not qualified. There was also no one to be the diplomat of the territory. After all, the position of a diplomat was very important. To a certain extent, he was Sullen's spokesperson. Basically, all diplomats were born nobles. After all, this was an era of conflict between nobles. If you did not understand the etiquette and way of speaking, you would not be qualified to be a diplomat. Therefore, this position could only be left vacant. Perhaps he could train one himself in the future. Su Len had been instructing the slaves and vagabonds to build a stable for the past 2 days. The winter in the northern wastelands was still very cold. The warmth of the stable had to be kept up. Otherwise, when winter came, the horses would be easily frostbitten by the heavy snow. The stable was built in the southeast of the town. There was a large open space here. Su Len purposely brought a canal from the Red Sand River. He also selected 5 spearmen and 5 archers from the war spirits to be stationed here. Although there were only 10 of them, these war spirits were well coordinated and well equipped. They had no problem dealing with small groups of gnolls or bugbears. If a large group of them entered the territory, they would be discovered immediately. The barbarian guards in the territory would deal with them as soon as possible. The stable was built very quickly. Su Len purposely took the time to cast mud to stone on the stable and turned the walls of the stable into a rock structure. Soon, the stable was built. Stable, a place where the horses live and rest. A good resting environment can make the horses stronger. Clean and tidy +3, energy recovery +2, energetic +1, disease reduction +2, warm as spring +2. After the construction of the stable was completed, the centaurs who came to trade also arrived. Su Luen ordered people to prepare 200 pieces of armor and 20 carriages for the trade, and then personally led them to the place agreed upon by the two sides. The camel beasts pulled the heavy carriages forward. More than 20 carriages formed a long line. Su Len and the barbarian guards were guarding by the side. There were also 30 war spirits next to them. It could be said that for this trade, Su Len had brought out most of the territory's power. He was not naive enough to think that he would directly send the goods to the centaurs because he had already agreed on the trade. There were no laws in the wilderness. Here, the power of the fist was the law. Persuasion was the law. If Su Luen didn't prepare enough deterrence, even though the two sides communicated harmoniously that day, once a lot of interests were involved, he believed that the centaurs would absolutely not mind acting as bandits. 20 carriages of food and 200 sets of armor. Such a large amount of wealth was enough for the centaurs to take the risk. Don't think that they would care about credibility. The tribes in the wilderness rose and fell too quickly. They did not have the time nor the right to think about long-term development. Su Len would not use his goods to test the centaurs' credibility. There was an 80 to 90% chance that they would not be able to withstand the test. The location of the trade was a plain outside of Sullen's territory. The terrain here was open. As long as a few people stood on the nearby high ground, they could see everything within a few kilometers. There was no need to worry about being ambushed. Even if the centaurs charged, they would have enough time to surround the carts. Soon, a scout galloped over on a galloping horse and swiftly dismounted from his horse. "Monseigneur, I've already scouted the area. There are no ambushes around." "Scout again." Su Luen nodded and said. The scout mounted his horse and galloped away again. The carts continued forward. After about an hour, the carts arrived at the agreed location. The centaurs also appeared on the other side. Su Len looked from afar and saw a black mass. Other than the war horses, there were at least 300 centaurs. On the other side, the centaurs who had just arrived also saw Sullen's carts. "Cain, is that the lord who made the trade with you? To think that they only brought so few people. Should we just eat them up?" A tall and muscular centaur with a naked upper body and scars all over his body came to Cain's side and asked in a low voice. "Cantor, don't attack first. The fact that these humans can stand in the wilderness means that they are not weak. But we can test them first," Cain said after some thought. "If they are not strong enough, you know what to do." "Understood. I'll go now." Although Cain had seen the ogre shaman's head and Cryopterus' head on the walls of Northgard Castle, he had never seen these humans in action. He was still doubtful. After all, these short humans were not as strong as the orcs. They also ran slower. Other than being good at farming, they had no other advantages. Chapter 132. Su Len stood at the front of the group and saw a dozen tall centaurs charging over. At first, Su Len thought they were here to trade, but after a while, he realized that they didn't seem to be slowing down at all. Although there were only a few centaurs, when they charged, they had the aura of an army of thousands of men and horses. "Boss, something's wrong." Johnson's face changed as he came over and said. "Looks like these centaurs have other ideas." Su Len sneered. "Hey, do they think they can do it?" Johnson spat in disdain and said eagerly, "Boss, why don't we just deal with them directly? They didn't all come. They probably want to test our strength. If we're strong enough, they'll pretend nothing happened. If we're not strong enough, these centaurs will swarm us." Sullen's tone was relaxed as he waved his hand. The war spirits behind him immediately stepped forward. 15 spearmen stood in a row, their sharp spears pointed upwards. The other 15 archers also stood in a row, their arrows stuck half a meter in front of them. Then, one by one, they knocked the arrows on their bows. 120 steps. Prepare to shoot 3 arrows. Shoot. Bang. With Su Luen's order, the 15 archers instantly released the bowstrings, and 15 sharp arrows flew out in an instant. Then these archers did not stop at all. Their hands were like phantoms as they shot 3 arrows in succession. The 3 consecutive waves of arrows crossed the distance of 120 steps in an instant and then nailed into the ground. Cantor led the 50 centaurs and charged towards the caravan. Very quickly, two groups of soldiers came out from the caravan. Looking at the thin formation of the soldiers, Cantor couldn't help but sneer. Such a thin formation wanted to stop the charge of the centaurs. But when he looked up, he saw a row of arrows flying at him. Cantor's face changed. He leaned back and his hooves rubbed against the ground. As soon as he stopped, there were 3 rows of arrows in front of him. The closest one was less than half a meter away from him. Looking at the arrows that were half buried in the ground, Cantor felt cold sweat. This level of accuracy and strength was not inferior to the archers in their clan. Moreover, their discipline was even better. Cantor hesitated for a moment and decided to give up on probing the enemy's strength. It was clear that although there weren't many humans, they weren't characters that could be easily manipulated. Cantor did not continue to charge. He slowed down and continued to move forward, bypassing the arrows. It didn't take long for Cantor to arrive in front of the human convoy. After what he had just experienced, he no longer dared to underestimate these humans. When he got closer, he discovered that there was a group of barbarian warriors armed to the teeth. After seeing these barbarians clearly, Cantor was secretly shocked. Although these barbarians looked carefree, the aura of their leader was something he had only felt from the Grand Patriarch. No, it seemed to be even stronger than the Grand Patriarch's aura. But how was this possible? How could such powerful barbarian warriors be under the command of such an ordinary-looking human lord? While Cantor was still thinking, Suluan asked, "Are you the one in charge of the Centaur tribe's trade?" "I am Cantor. I am responsible for inspecting the goods. Hunter is in charge of the trade. As long as the goods are up to standard, we can proceed with the trade." Cantor looked at the shining armor with a burning passion. Sulan looked at the centaur and said to Johnson, "Of course you can inspect the goods. But you can't just look at ours. Johnson, take a group and see if their goods are up to standard." "Understood, boss." Johnson grinned at Cantor and called a dozen barbarians over to the centaurs not far away. The trade went smoothly. Sulan simply showed off his muscles to let the centaurs know how strong he was, and they obediently carried out the trade. In addition to 300 horses, 100 longbows, 300 pounds of gold, and 200 orc slaves. These orcs looked ugly. They had gray skin and coarse hair. They had hunched backs, low foreheads, and faces that looked like pig faces. Their lower canine teeth were protruding like elephant tusks. These orcs were about 1.8 meters tall. Their clothes were tattered, and there were many crisscrossing whip marks on their skin. As for the cat-eared girls that Sulan wanted, they had nothing to do with the orcs. He also learned from Hathaway that the cat-eared girls were actually were creatures. It was said that these were creatures came from some dark human experiments during the Arcane Empire in the last era. When the Arcane Empire was destroyed, the were creatures were freed. In the beginning, the bloodline of the were creatures was not very stable. There were often occurrences of atavism or collapse. It was not until many generations later that the were creatures were formed. The were creatures had a strong talent in some aspects, but they also had obvious shortcomings in some areas. In fact, the were creatures were just a kind of failed product of the arcanists of the Arcane Empire. However, after thousands of years of reproduction, the bloodline of the were creatures had stabilized. The wizards of this world had actually obtained part of the knowledge of the Arcane Kingdom. It was said that the legendary and incomparably glorious Arcane Kingdom was not the original inhabitants of this world, but a group of outsiders. They were conquerors from other worlds, and the original human heroes of this world were probably the servants of those conquerors. This was also the reason why the human heroes at the end of the last era were so powerful. Of course, the nobles scoffed at such a theory and sealed it off completely. All of the books were destroyed and burned, and only the magi who had been around for a long time left behind some incomplete information. The nobles claimed that the human heroes were inspired by the gods or blessed by the ancient elves. Then, they became heroes. It was also the gods who asked them to lead humans from darkness to civilization. In Sullen's view, the wizard's statement was actually more credible. Of course, the nobles would be stupid if they admitted it. It was like throwing their noble aura directly into a cesspool and then stepping on it. As a noble, Su Len had vested interests. Even he would make the same choice as the nobles. Su Len looked at the war creatures. These war creatures looked at the centaurs and humans with hatred, but he did not care. Northgard Castle had enough strength to suppress them. Chapter 133. After a while, the two sides finally completed the trade. The centaurs were very satisfied with the armor provided by the North Fortress. Many of them put on the armor right away. After the transaction was completed, Su Luan's team became more powerful. The 300 horses were mighty. Fortunately, these horses had been trained, and only a few people were needed to control these horses to keep up. It took them much less time to go back than when they came. The 20 carriages were almost empty. After returning to the Northtown Castle, Su Luan arranged the war horses and then took out a centaur longbow to try. The centaur longbow was longer than the average human bow. It was about 1.5 meters long. In fact, this type of bow was not suitable for cavalry. The length of the bow was too long, and it was very inconvenient to ride on a horse. Very few human cavalry bows were longer than 1 meter. Only the centaurs with their special physique could use this type of longbow. The range of a normal cavalry bow and a centaur longbow was about a third or even more. Su Len bought these centaur longbows for cavalry. From this, it was clear that the centaur light cavalry could easily defeat the human light cavalry. They could even kite the human light cavalry to death. That was the advantage of their race. The centaur longbow was made of purple fir wood. The body of the bow was very smooth. Because it was a weapon used by centaurs, it required a lot of strength to draw the bow. Without professional training, it was impossible to control it. Centaur longbow, hard bow, made with purple fir wood as the main material. This is an excellent centaur longbow. It took the centaur craftsman 3 years to complete it. It has a tenacity and range that far surpasses ordinary bows. However, to use it, one must have great strength, range, and power. Range +1, armor penetration +1, strength requirement, 10. Su Len came to the shooting range and stood about 120 meters away from the target. He picked up an arrow, knocked it, aimed at the target, and shot. Dong! A sharp arrow sank into the bull's eye. Su Len did not stop. He picked up the arrow stuck in the ground and shot at the target in front of him. Dong dong dong. Translator, WQL editor, Alim Su Len shot out 5 consecutive arrows. With the speed of more than 100 arrows, Su Len was already very good at archery. Therefore, it was not difficult for him to shoot consecutive arrows. It only took him a few seconds to shoot out the first arrow to the 5th arrow. Su Len didn't stop. He grabbed the arrows and shot continuously. There were 30 arrows in one quiver, and Su Len used only half a minute to shoot all of them. All the arrows on the row of targets in the distance hit the bullseye. After a series of tests, these centaur longbows had an effective range of 1/4 to 1/5 longer than the best walking bows used by humans, and 1/3 longer range than riding bows. The centaur longbow had a maximum range of 330 meters and an effective range of 200 meters. The best range was around 120 meters. At this range, the arrows would have a high penetrative power. Only Sullen's iron body bow was better than the centaur longbow in Northgard Castle. The longbows used by the war spirits had the same range as the centaur longbow. This kind of arrow could easily penetrate ordinary armor at a distance of 120 meters. Only armor made of steel could withstand this kind of arrow. Of course, the weakness of the centaur longbow was obvious. It required a lot of strength to draw these longbows. Normal people could not use them at all. They could only learn to use them after some professional training. The new archers in the camp could not use these bows yet. They could only use them when they leveled up. If they wanted to use them flexibly, they would have to level up to become elite longbowmen. Even so, the number of times they could shoot with these bows would be reduced. It might be difficult for others to find enough archers, but for Su Len, it was just a matter of time. After 3 to 6 months of training, the refugees would become qualified recruits. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that they were physically weak, their recruit training would have ended in 3 months. After that, they would follow the barbarian guards to patrol the territory. After a few more battles, they would be promoted to longbowmen or elite longbowmen. After understanding the power of the centaur longbow, Su Lan had a clear understanding of the strength of the centaurs. If Su Lan encountered a group of centaur longbow when he first opened up his territory, there was a 90% chance that his barbarian warriors would be wiped out. These centaurs ran faster than the barbarians, and their arrows were more accurate. As long as the barbarians did not have a chance to get close, the barbarians would be easy targets. If Sullan's territory had 1,000 elite longbowmen, even if there were 10 times the number of barbarians attacking the city, these longbowmen would be enough to wipe out the enemy. After understanding the strength of the centaur longbow, Su Lan decided to expand his archer team. Of course, if he wanted to form a large archer team, he would need to increase the population. Although Northgard Castle had found many ways to increase its population, it still had less than 3,000 people. As time passed, the northern wastelands entered winter. When he woke up in the morning, he could see the white frost on the roof. When he went out, his breath was already white. Northgard Castle's winter came a month earlier than the other provinces in the south. After this month, it would start snowing in the northern wastelands. By then, the roads would be blocked by heavy snow, and the trade route between Northgard Castle and Cult City would be interrupted. Therefore, if Su Lan wanted to increase his population quickly, there was only 1 month left. After that, it would be 3 months of winter. Not long ago, Su Lan had obtained 300 pounds of gold from the Centaur tribe's trade. The gold could be cast into kinnar at least 30,000 pieces. If he was greedy enough to mix in some other metals, it would not be a problem to cast an additional 10,000 pieces. After all, even the official kinnar cast by the Kingdom of Florence was mixed with other metals. He planned to let Xian go to Cult City to buy a large number of slaves in the last month. Apart from buying serfs, Su Lan also planned to buy slaves with various skills. After arranging a team of 20 war spirits and a team of barbarian warriors, Su Lan asked Boulder to bring 15,000 pieces of kinnar and follow Xian to Cult City. After arranging the caravan, Su Lan began to think about the drows. It was already winter, and the drows had not experienced the cold winter in the northern wastelands. He wanted to recruit the drows, and this was a good opportunity. Chapter 134. Su Lan decided to support the Centaur tribe. After all, if the Centaur tribe lost, the Orc tribe would take over their territory. Sullan's territory directly bordered the Orc tribe. He didn't want to fight against an Orc tribe with tens of thousands of people at this time. Maybe he would wait for another 2 years, when he had enough soldiers, and then he would fight against these big tribes. Orcs and humans were also enemies. In the past, it was humans who worked with the dwarves and elves to drive the orcs to those areas with bad environments. Over the years, the orcs all over the continent never gave up and returned to those rich lands. If Sullan's territory bordered the orcs, they would definitely attack his territory. But now that the Centaur tribe was in front of him, Sullan's territory could develop in peace. Su Lan used the gold he got from trading with the centaurs to make coins. He mixed some copper and other metals into the 300 pounds of gold. Su Lan even built a coin workshop for this purpose. The workshop wasn't big, but Su Lan let Chris manage it to make sure the workers didn't embezzle anything. With a succubus who was an expert at manipulating people, Su Lan didn't have to worry about the workers embezzling his money. In addition to the gold coins, the coin workshop also minted copper and silver coins. Gold coins were used for large-scale trade and were rarely circulated in the hands of commoners. Silver and copper coins were the main currency in circulation. With the development of the Northgard Castle, Su Lan clearly noticed that the amount of money in his territory was a little insufficient. In fact, there was no other way. The number of freemen in Su Luan's territory was too small. Most of them were his serfs, so there was no need for currency circulation at all. It was also because of the trade caravan that the number of freemen began to increase. Coupled with the increase in the number of refugees, all kinds of products were abundant, and the circulation of materials in the territory gradually increased. Due to the shortage of copper and silver nars, Northtown Castle had to barter most of the time, which made it difficult to set a price for the goods. What's more, it was very inconvenient to trade. Therefore, Suluan began to make copper and silver nars after noticing this. There were many types of currency in this world, and there was no unified currency. The exchange rate between countries was also different. It was very troublesome for merchants from different countries to exchange currencies. If they didn't clearly state which currency they were using during the transaction, it was very likely that they would be cheated. Therefore, those merchants who did international trade were very familiar with the currencies of various countries. It was not easy to become an international merchant. Even in modern society, there were counterfeit currencies. Naturally, there were counterfeit currencies in this era as well. For example, brass was used to pass off as gold. In fact, what was more troublesome was the inferior currency. Originally, the difference in gold content between different countries was already a headache. However, there were also some privately minted gold coins. Most of these privately minted gold coins were lower in gold content than the original currency. Naturally, it was more difficult to settle the transaction. The Kingdom of Florence used a kinnar, silver, and copper exchange rate. 1 kinnar could be exchanged for 20 silver nars, and 1 silver enar could be exchanged for 20 copper nars. Although it was a little troublesome, it was still acceptable. However, the exchange rate of some countries made people want to kill the people who set the exchange rate. For example, the desert kingdom northwest of Florence used a gold coin for 12 silver nars, and 1 silver nars for 20 copper nars. People who were not good at math would make mistakes when shopping on the street. There was also the exchange rate in the hexadecimal system, which was even more frustrating. In fact, the goddess of wealth in this world issued a standard gold coin. However, these gold coins were mostly circulated in the south of the continent and in the areas where sea trade was popular. The exchange rate of the goddess of wealth's gold coins was decimal. There was no temple of the goddess of wealth in the kingdom of Florence yet. Of course, Suluan was not stupid enough to use this method of exchange. If he was not worried that those merchants would not accept it, he would directly change the ratio of gold enar to silver enar to copper enar to 10. The simpler the exchange rate, the more convenient it was for ordinary people to use. In order to make the circulation of goods in the territory smoother and more prosperous, Sulen directly asked the craftsman to make 100,000 copper nars. It just so happened that he obtained a lot of bronze weapons when he wiped out the gnolls and kobolds. These things could be used to make coins. At the same time, he also made 10,000 nars. These coins would be distributed to the refugees as remuneration for their labor. In fact, the coinage industry was very profitable. After all, the gold and silver content in gold and silver coins were not pure. Hathaway had already finished making the leather armor and cloaks made of the Stormwind tiger's skin. The 5 scouts each received a cloak, and the remaining one was given to the captain of the archers in the war spirits. The 12 leather armor were rewarded to the barbarians. With these cloaks, the scouts' detection ability and survival ability were greatly improved. Camouflage allowed them to scout closer, and haste and featherfall allowed them to escape faster. The barbarians who received the leather armor put it on under their iron armor. This way, not only could they use the enchantment effect of the leather armor, but they could also gain the defense of the iron armor. With haste and the barbarians' charging ability, the speed of the barbarians was already faster than that of a horse. If they were to face the centaurs now, with the speed of the barbarians, they would be able to catch up with them easily. In close combat, the centaurs were not a match for the barbarians at all. Not to mention, the 12 barbarians had already leveled up to the peak of their profession, great axe berserkers. Sulen had always been vigilant against the centaurs. In this wasteland, even the humans could not be trusted too much. What if one day, the centaurs and the orcs suddenly reconciled, and both sides turned against him? The barbarian warriors who got the new equipment were very proud and arrogant. Sometimes Suluan couldn't help but want to kick them. After driving the barbarians out to patrol, Sulen went to the incubation room to check on the Cryopterus eggs. Ever since the Cryopterus eggs began to hatch, Sulen would come here every day to check. At the same time, he would also replenish the Cryopterus eggs with ice elemental stones. After a period of incubation, the inside of the incubation room had changed greatly. The 150 square meter incubation room had turned into a world of ice and snow, which was the best environment for Cryopteris to hatch. Chapter 135. The ice elemental energy in the incubation room was very dense. A bone-piercing chill could be felt as soon as he stepped into the room. Sulen picked up the depleted cold moon stone and replaced it with a new one. This kind of low-level ice elemental crystal cost 30 kinnar. Basically, one cold moon stone could be used for 2 days. If he wanted to hatch these Cryopteris, just the cold moon stone alone would cost him more than 1,000 kinnar. After replacing the new cold moon stone, Sulen checked the 13 Cryopteris eggs in the incubation room. There was nothing wrong with the 13 dragon eggs. The life force and ice elemental energy in the eggs were slowly increasing. This meant that these eggs were in a normal state of development. If the life force in these winged dragon eggs weakened or stagnated, it meant that these winged dragon eggs were most likely dead. Some skilled hatcheries might have a chance to save these eggs, but Sulen could only watch. After checking the winged dragon eggs, Sulen stood up and left the room. After telling the 2 barbarian warriors to guard the eggs carefully, Sulen continued to patrol the other parts of the camp. The sugar refinery was right next to the Lord's castle. The sugar produced by the refinery was the biggest source of income for the northern fortress. However, the sugar trade had ended this year. As a matter of fact, the wild sugar beets collected by the northern fortress were almost used up. The territory controlled by the northern fortress now had a diameter of 20 kilometers. The areas close to the northern fortress had been cleaned up. If they wanted to dig up more beets, they would have to look further. Beets were not weeds that could be found everywhere. During this time, the teams that went out to dig for beets were getting less and less. In order to accumulate enough raw materials, Sulen had sent out more than 20 teams of 600 people. The sugar workshop could produce 20 pounds of sugar a day. It could produce 600 pounds of sugar a month. Other than sugar, there was also a lot of waste honey and beet residue. The waste honey was sent to the brewery on the other side to make rum, and the residue was used to make silage. The Northgard castle had raised over 100 bison and even more spotted antelope and giant antler deer. They consumed a lot of vegetables every day. One of the most important tasks in the territory was to store the food. Many of the slaves bought from Cult City were proficient in breeding. Although they had never reared spotted antelopes, buffaloes, and giant antler deer before, after a few months, they were familiar with their habits. After the harvest of the territory, in addition to harvesting potatoes, the leaves and vines were also chopped up to become their food. It could be said that Sulen's territory had formed a simple industrial chain that connected all the resources in the territory. Beets could be used to extract sugar, and the remaining honey could be used to make wine. Beet dregs could be used to feed livestock, and the manure of livestock could be fermented and used to fertilize the fields. Thus, a somewhat crude industrial chain was established. As long as the Northgard fortress didn't make any mistakes or get attacked by the monsters in the wilderness, the place would continue to prosper. After inspecting the workshops and farms, Sulen went to the smithy. There was a blast furnace near the smithy. One could see it from afar. Because of the technology, the blast furnace couldn't produce steel every time. After all, Sulen's knowledge was limited. He could only rely on the blacksmiths to figure it out. Sulen came here to forge a new weapon. After becoming a legendary, his spear was no longer suitable for him. The dwarves and elves were the best blacksmiths in the world. Both races had mastered the forging method of low-carbon steel and carbizing steel. Weapons made with carbizing steel were naturally +2 even if they weren't enchanted. Bruce was the best blacksmith in the Northgard castle. Sulen was going to customize a new weapon and ask Hathaway to enchant it. There were very few blacksmiths with superb skills, and even fewer who could forge legendary weapons. In order to forge a legendary weapon, one would need to have superb blacksmithing skills, some extraordinary materials, a skilled alchemist, and a bit of luck. Only then would one be able to forge a legendary weapon. Although Bruce's skills were good, he wasn't a master yet. Hathaway was only an intermediate alchemist. Alchemists needed to constantly experiment and accumulate experience before they could level up. In other words, they needed a lot of materials. It was impossible to forge a legendary weapon with such a lineup. Unless the goddess of luck was smiling at you. Sulen was going to forge an advanced magic weapon. Bruce, you can forge rare weapons now, right? Sulen came to the smithy and asked. If I have the materials, I'm 80% sure. But I don't know alchemy, so I can't enchant it, Bruce said as he wiped the sweat off his face. You don't have to worry about the enchantment. I'll find someone to do it. Sulen waved his hand and said, I have a weapon blueprint here. See if you can make it. Sulen spent 1,000 kinnar to buy a blueprint for the purple dragon halberd from the system store. He also bought meteor iron, tungsten steel, and amethyst to forge the weapon. The set of materials cost him 5,000 kinnar. The weapons in this world were divided into normal weapons, rare weapons, and legendary weapons. Normal weapons didn't have any bonuses and were considered common weapons. Rare weapons were also called magic weapons. The lowest grade was +1 enchantment or +1 enhancement. For example, the battle axes used by the barbarians were +1 sharpness. Experienced blacksmiths would occasionally forge them. They were considered excellent weapons and were much more expensive than normal weapons. The centaur longbow that Sulen bought last time was +2 equipment. These equipment were also called low-level magic items. As 4+3 weapons, Sulen's iron body bow was 1. It was a medium-level magic equipment. Sulen was preparing to forge the purple dragon halberd. If he succeeded, it would be a +4 high-level magic equipment. The lowest grade of legendary weapons was +5. As for the legendary weapons, Sulen hadn't seen them before, but he guessed that they would be +7 or +8 at least. After getting the materials, Bruce prepared to forge. But first, he picked up the blueprint for the purple dragon halberd and looked at it. The purple dragon halberd was a half-moon halberd. In fact, there were even more powerful weapon blueprints in the system store. For example, the sky halberd, dragon's courage spear, ghost god's sky halberd, and so on. However, the lowest grade of these weapons was legendary. The required materials weren't sold in the system store, and there weren't any master blacksmiths to make them. So, in the end, he chose to forge the purple dragon halberd. P.S. I'm really not her disciple. The main character, Ishan, Apprentice to the No. 1 Fairy, by Zyru. The author is a serious person who never steps on the brakes. Chapter 136. After Sulen prepared the materials, Bruce began to work. He needed to refine the materials first. Most rare weapons were made with the 100-fold forging technique. Some skilled blacksmiths could create cloud patterns while forging the weapons. The steel made with this technique was called cloud pattern steel. Sulen prepared meteor iron, tungsten steel, and amethyst. They were all rare materials. It was not easy to merge them perfectly. Bruce called all of his apprentices over. There weren't many opportunities for them to observe the forging of high-grade rare weapons at such a close distance. It would be very helpful for them to master more advanced skills. The furnace was burning fiercely. Under the urging of the hydraulic blower, the temperature in the furnace was getting hotter and hotter. Standing in the blacksmith's shop, waves of heat waves assaulted their faces. Putting the materials in the furnace and adding all kinds of accelerants, the furnace's temperature soon rose again. The materials in the furnace soon turned red and softened. Then, he took them out and began to hit them. Sparks flew everywhere, and a rhythmic sound was heard. Sulen did not wait for Bruce to forge weapons. Instead, he went to inspect other places in the territory. After more than a month, the first batch of bricks was finally done. The foundation of the outer city wall of the North Castle had been built. Now that there were bricks, the progress could be sped up. In fact, other than bricks, the outer city walls of the North Town Castle were also made of slag. Every month, the blast furnace in the blacksmith's shop would produce a lot of slag when it was producing iron ore. The slag was very hard, so it was very suitable to build the city walls with some adhesive materials. Because the outer city wall was too big, if he built it with rammed earth and then converted it with mud to stone, he would not be able to convert much of it with his current mana. Mud to stone could convert earth into stone. The more he converted, the more mana he would need. The outer city wall was at least 4 kilometers long. Each section was 10 meters high and 6 meters wide. Su Luan could not change much at a time, but after using the masonry structure, he only needed to transform the cement between the masonry into rock with mud to rock, and the magic power consumption was reduced at once. Of course, it would take longer, but the advantage was that Su Luan didn't have to stay at the construction site all day long. The Beastman laborers from the Centaur tribe were also arranged here. With these strong Beastman laborers, the construction of the city walls sped up a lot. Because there was nothing urgent, Su Luan had been very relaxed these 2 days. Chris had taken care of most of the things, and he only needed to confirm the rest. Master, these are the coins that were just produced by the coin workshop. While Su Luan was hiding in the study and watching attendant Chin, Chris came in with a delicate box. Throwing the book aside, Su Luan stretched and hugged Chris in his arms. He sat down on the chair again and buried his head in her broad chest. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the box and checked it. Chris had long known Su Luan's preferences, so she wasn't surprised by his sudden attack. Are these the coins they made? Su Luan said as he played with a few coins. There were 6 coins in the box, 2 gold, 2 silver and 2 copper coins. Su Luan picked up a copper coin, which was the smallest value. The copper coin was slightly green and had a good texture. Compared to the copper coin that was circulating next to it, it was better in terms of appearance and quality. Next, Su Luan checked the other coins. The silver content of the silver coins was the same as the silver coins circulating in the kingdom, 80% silver and 20% other metals. The same was true for the gold coins. Su Luan did not intend to make a large number of inferior coins in his territory. The consequence of this was that the people did not trust coins and resisted the use of coins. They would still use the barter method, which was completely contrary to his original intention. In the Kingdom of Florence, many nobles with real power would privately make coins. Although those nobles who made inferior coins would earn a lot of money in the beginning, it wouldn't take long for the trade in their territory to wither quickly. No merchants would trade with them. A gold dinar was 80% gold, but its face value was pure gold. Su Luan had made 20% of his profit from the coinage alone. He didn't intend to make inferior coins like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, such as white sugar and liquor, which were in high demand. Make the coins according to these. After checking it again, Su Luan decided on the style of the coins. Okay, I'll ask them to start making them in large quantities. Chris got out of Su Luan's arms lightly, then gave him a flirtatious wink and ran away with a smile. Su Luan tidied up his tight clothes and left the study. The blacksmith shop was bustling with activity, and the clanging sounds were very rhythmic. Bruce's eyes were bloodshot, and his bare chest was dripping with sweat. His skin was red from the heat of the furnace, but his expression was very excited, and he was directing the many apprentices to get busy. There were all kinds of rare materials beside him. Forging extraordinary weapons didn't mean that all the materials had to be extraordinary materials. Many of the auxiliary materials were just some rare minerals. Forging didn't directly mix all the materials together. If it was done this way, there was no other possibility other than wasting materials. The forging process in this world was still very magical. During the forging process, various catalysts or some strange things would be added. The purple dragon halberd used some Cryopterus blood to quench it during the forging process. The weapon was originally red, but after entering Cryopterus blood, it quickly cooled down. A burst of ice element energy instantly even lowered the temperature in the originally stuffy blacksmith shop by dozens of degrees. After the second quenching, Bruce heated up the metal again and hammered it again. The hammering was very rhythmic, and it seemed to have an indescribable charm. After hammering for a while, the metal was heated up again and some new materials were added. Under this repeated hammering, the metal became more compact. Strange patterns were faintly discernible during the forging process. All kinds of rare materials were added one after another. The meteor iron and tungsten steel had long been fused into one, and now a new kind of alloy was formed. Bruce was completely immersed in the forging process. This was a very rare opportunity for a skilled blacksmith. In this state, the blacksmith's skills would be greatly improved. If the forging process was successful, then Bruce's craftsmanship would improve tremendously. If he was lucky, it wouldn't be impossible for him to become a blacksmith master. Sulan didn't disturb Bruce, who was immersed in this special state. He also drove the apprentices who were about to wake him up to watch, leaving only 2 people to assist him. The clanging sound seemed to converge into a piece of music at this moment. The purple dragon halberd was also slowly taking shape in this state. Chapter 137. It was not easy to create a high-grade rare weapon. Without enchantment, the blacksmith master's work was the limit. Any higher would require magic enchantment. Magic enchantment was a very magical thing. It had the ability to turn something rotten into something magical. It could add some magical power to the weapon. There were many monsters and powerful creatures in this world. Ordinary weapons could not hurt them. For example, a real dragon. Ordinary weapons could not leave a mark on the scales of a real dragon. There were also some elemental creatures. Ordinary weapons were also ineffective. Take the fire elemental elder for example. Ordinary weapons would turn into molten iron as soon as they got close. Only rare weapons could hurt them. Bruce's eyes became more and more bloodshot, and his spirit became more and more excited. Sulan was worried that his body could not take it, so he asked Hathaway to make him an energy potion and a strength potion. Although Bruce's blacksmith skills were extraordinary, his strength was not strong. He was only a low-grade warrior. Continuous high-intensity work without sleep for several days was likely to cause serious damage to his body. Maybe after he finished forging the weapon, he would exit that strange state and become a cripple. He did not want a blacksmith master to become a cripple. Soon, 5 days had passed. Bruce did not sleep for 5 days. Although he had the potions provided by Hathaway, he still looked thinner. However, he still looked excited. The blacksmith apprentices had already taken turns to help here. Even so, these blacksmith apprentices looked a little dispirited. Sulan came here every day to check. Finally, on the 6th day, Bruce's face showed a trace of satisfaction. Clang! The hammer fell. A single-sided crescent halberd covered with cloud patterns and shimmering with purple light appeared on the workbench. The halberd's body was simple. There were only some decorations like fish scales, which were used to prevent slippage. The crescent blade on it had been sharpened. The cloud patterns around it made it look very mysterious. Su Luan took a look at it and fell in love with it at once. He reached out and grabbed it. The weight was just right. Su Luan skillfully brandished the spear and directly hacked at the black iron stone used to test his saber. Whoosh! A section of the black iron stone was directly cut off. The cut was as smooth as a mirror. This kind of black iron stone was used to test the saber and was extremely hard. Ordinary sabers and swords would only be able to leave a shallow mark on it, but this purple dragon halberd was actually able to easily cut through it. Sulan held the halberd horizontally and looked at the crescent blade. He saw that there were no marks or gaps on the blade. It was still shining with cold light. Sulan looked at the purple dragon halberd in his hand with satisfaction. This weapon could be said to be the strongest weapon he had ever seen. Phew, I'm finally done. I'm too tired. I'll take a nap first. I'll take a nap. After Bruce finished forging, a strong sense of fatigue suddenly hit him. His whole body was sore and his eyelids were so heavy that he couldn't open them at all. As soon as he finished speaking, his body swayed and fell backward. Fortunately, Sullen's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He caught Bruce and the 2 blacksmith apprentices beside him quickly went forward to support him. Sulan thought that this guy was exhausted. After hearing the snoring sound and finding that Bruce was just overly tired, he was relieved and let the 2 blacksmith apprentices take him back to rest. Purple Dragon Halberd, type, spear weapon, unenchanted, +3 item grade, middle-rank magic item. It is a powerful weapon made with forged steel, meteor iron, tungsten steel, and purple crystal as raw materials. It is quenched with the blood of Cryopterus. Requirements: Strength 14 or above. Additional effect: Sharpness +3, Toughness +3, Armor Penetration +2. Looking at the attributes of this weapon, Sullen's expression was also very surprised. This weapon had reached the limit of a middle-rank magic item. However, this weapon itself did not have any elemental damage. Of course, its additional sharpness and armor penetration were already very strong. Level 3 sharpness and level 2 armor penetration. Even steel plate armor could be easily broken by this weapon. This weapon was not completed yet. Sulan left the blacksmith shop with the purple dragon halberd and walked towards Hathaway's laboratory. Whether this weapon could become a high-rank magic item or not depended on the enchantment effect of Hathaway. After arriving at Hathaway's alchemy laboratory and telling Hathaway the requirements of the weapon enchantment, Sulan put down the weapon and left. This kind of high-rank enchantment could not have the slightest mistake. Sulan naturally could not stay here. If there was a problem and caused the enchantment to fail, the power of this weapon would be greatly reduced. At that time, even Bruce might not be able to forge such a peak middle-rank weapon again. After coming out of the laboratory, Sulan suddenly felt a little cold on his face. He looked up and saw snow falling from the sky. It was snowing in the northern wasteland. Sulan stood on the balcony of the castle and looked at the sky outside. At this time, it was already snowing heavily. The caravan led by Xian had been gone for more than half a month. At this time, they should be on their way back. However, they encountered this heavy snow, so the time of their return would probably be delayed. He was not worried about the safety of the caravan. He was worried about the slaves that he bought this time. If the snow was too heavy and Xian did not prepare enough cotton-padded clothes, many of the slaves would definitely freeze to death. The territory's population was not enough to begin with. He did not want to lose any more people. Have the winter supplies in the city been distributed? Sulan asked casually. According to your instructions, it has been distributed, Chris said. I've already made sure that everyone has cotton-padded clothes. At the same time, every household has been given charcoal to warm themselves. Moreover, the houses we built have good insulation. This winter, no one will freeze to death. Xian will definitely bring back a large number of slaves. Have their living quarters and cotton-padded clothes been prepared? I've prepared for 3,000 people, Chris said. That's not enough. Double the number. The winter in the northern wasteland is very cold. Those refugees who can't survive will not give up any chance to live. When the time comes, there will be a lot of people. Xian had brought 15,000 gold nars with him this time. A slave of the lowest grade would cost around 2 gold nars, while a slave with a certain skill would cost between 50 to 100 gold nars. He must have bought a lot of slaves this time. I'll have someone arrange it. Chris nodded and prepared to leave. However, at this time, a series of hurried footsteps came from the corridor, followed by a knock on the door. Come in, Chris said. Monseigneur, there's an urgent military report. A man dressed as a scout walked in and said. Sullen's heart tightened. The scouts he sent out had been investigating the movements outside the territory. It seemed that another tribe was about to make a move. Chapter 138. The trolls were coming. Skinny Monkey had just told him that some trolls were moving towards the Northgard castle. The trolls were quite powerful in the wastelands. It was said that they once had a huge empire, but they lost the war with the ancient elves. In the end, the empire fell apart, and all the trolls were expelled to the wastelands. Sulan knew how troublesome the trolls were. They used to have their own civilization. Although they were defeated by the elves, the trolls' tribes were not to be underestimated. The trolls were living in tribes now. They thought that the empire had fallen, and all the trolls were running their own tribes. After being banished to the wildlands, the trolls' civilization had changed a lot. For example, the trolls had started to worship ancestor souls and natural spirits. Although the ancestor souls and natural spirits were not gods, they had some of the power of gods. The trolls could use them to cast elemental powers. Many of the trolls were first-class warriors, hunters, and assassins. They were very dangerous, especially since many of the trolls were good at using poison. The trolls' poison was very strong. Even the ogres could not withstand it. Now, the trolls were approaching the Northgard castle. Why are the trolls moving towards us? Sulen was confused. Although the trolls' tribe was not far from the Northgard castle, why would they attack humans? The trolls' enemies were the elves and half-elves. Even if they were going to attack, why would they choose to attack in the winter? Food. The trolls don't have enough food. That was the only explanation Sulen could think of. The trolls did not know how to farm. They were nomads. They relied on hunting and raising livestock. This was a very fragile way. Once there was a natural disaster, they would run out of food. If there was not enough food, the trolls would rob other tribes. The trolls' tribe near the Northgard castle was not very big. There were less than 1,000 trolls. Although the trolls weren't as numerous as the centaurs and orcs, they were still a very difficult race to deal with. The trolls had a very disgusting innate ability to regenerate. Their regenerative ability was simply perverted. Even if their arms or legs were broken, they would grow back in a few days. If they wanted to kill them, other than using fire or acid, they would have to use all kinds of powerful elemental attacks. The snow stopped after a day. Northtown Castle started clearing the snow in the morning. Luckily, the snow was not very thick. Sheriff Harrison was patrolling the town with the patrol team to check if there were any houses that had collapsed due to the snow. Boulder, on the other hand, was sent to the horse farm to see if the war horses were affected. The construction of the houses in the territory did not skimp and the heavy snow did not affect them too much. Because the troll tribe showed signs of moving south, Surin sent all the scouts to investigate. Even the drow Eden was sent out. As a drow proficient in assassination and investigation, Eden could be said to be the best scout in Northgard Castle. Sulen had sent half of the soldiers to escort the caravans, so there weren't many soldiers left in the territory. Sulen did not recruit a large number of ordinary serfs or refugees into the army. Those peasants who could not even hold a spear properly were just giving away military merits to others on the battlefield. Eden's silhouette flew past. Even though there was a heavy snowfall yesterday, there was only a thin layer of snow on the wasteland. The withered yellow grass was at least half a person's height, which was easy for a rogue to hide in. He was not unfamiliar with the environment here. After all, he had taken the scouts to explore the surrounding area to train them. Even so, Aiden was not careless at all. There were also rogues among the trolls. They could track their targets through footprints, smells, and traces of broken branches and trees. When facing these opponents, one careless mistake could lead to failure. Creak. Aiden tiptoed lightly on a big tree and then slowly landed on the ground. Because the trees were lush, there was not much snow in the forest. However, there was a thick layer of fallen leaves on the ground. It creaked when he stepped on it. There were many messy footprints on the ground. Although those people had disguised themselves when they left, in the eyes of an expert, they were still clearly visible like torches in the night. Eden reached out and wiped away the messy leaves. A trail appeared in front of him. Following the trace, Aiden found a few gray hairs on some leaves. Gnolls. There were indeed gnolls in the troll tribe. The number of trolls was limited. They would enslave other races to serve them. This troll tribe was likely to have enslaved a large number of gnolls as cannon fodder. After discovering the trace, Aiden's eyes flashed with a cold light, and a cruel expression appeared on his face. Even if they were drows who believed in the Dark Maiden, their cruel and cold genes were still engraved in their bones. Battles between scouts were very dangerous. Victory and defeat were often decided in an instant. The most common ones were encounters or ambushes. Even a Grand Knight could fail miserably in such a situation. A low-grade professional who was proficient in tracking, hiding, and traps could also kill enemies who were far more powerful than him. Aiden moved quickly along the traces in the grass. As an excellent rogue, his tracking skills were still very strong. These traces in front of him were left today. Brilliant rogues could even track traces left a few days or even a week ago. They could distinguish the height, weight, and type of the enemy through these traces. The main force of the troll tribe had not yet arrived. After all, there were still many things to prepare for the army. But even so, the trolls would come here in 3 days at most. Aiden was now encountering the troll tribe scouts. Shadow hide. After passing through a shadow, Aiden's figure gradually merged into the shadow and then disappeared. As a drow, his ears were very sensitive. Just now, he had heard some movements in the distance. Aiden's body was shrouded in shadows, and then he approached the direction of the sound. He was already close to the Sierra de Lotus. Soon Aiden found a cave hidden in the bushes. The outside of the cave was covered by vines. If one did not pay attention, it would be impossible to find it. It looked a little dark inside. At this time, there was some movement in the cave, but it quickly disappeared. After a while, a tall figure came out of the cave. The figure pushed aside the vines, and a gray coyote head popped out. It was a gnoll, but the corners of his mouth were obviously swollen. The gnoll looked around and then found a hidden corner near the entrance of the cave to hide. Obviously, this unlucky guy was arranged to keep watch. Chapter 139. They carefully avoided the traps and made sure that they didn't make any noise. At this distance, any mistake would alert them. After spending some time, Aiden bypassed the traps and began to approach the gnoll. The shadow was his best protection. Aiden's eyes flashed with a cold light. Backstab. Kidney strike. Throat cut. An icy cold light flashed past. The gnoll covered his throat with one hand, and the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. The gnoll's incredulous expression froze forever. Dark red blood slowly flowed out of his body. The gnoll's body twitched a few times, and then there was no more movement. He gently pulled out the dagger and took care of the hidden sentry. He slowly approached the entrance of the cave. Following the faint light from the cave, he saw the remaining 3 figures in the cave. The entrance of the cave was not big, but there was no cover. It was very difficult to approach quietly, but it was not impossible. Aiden took out a well-made crossbow from a pocket, strung it, and loaded an arrow. After making sure there were no mistakes, he walked directly into the cave. Poison Fong, didn't I tell you to keep watch outside? Why did you come in again? Did you not learn your lesson? Seeing the shadow suddenly appear at the entrance of the cave, the leading troll shouted angrily. However, the black figure completely ignored his words and continued to walk inside. No, it's an enemy. Just as he realized that something was wrong, Aiden suddenly raised his left hand, and a cold light instantly flew out. At such a close distance, the crossbow arrow flashed past and sank into the throat of a gnoll beside him. The gnoll had no time to dodge. He covered his throat and fell to the ground. After hearing the sound, another gnoll grabbed his weapon and prepared to attack. However, Aiden did not withdraw after firing the crossbow. On the contrary, he accelerated and rushed over. He pulled out a scimitar from behind and instantly slashed at the gnoll closest to him. The sudden outbreak of the battle was a life-and-death battle. There were no hundreds of rounds of battle, but more of a life-and-death battle in an instant. The gnoll subconsciously picked up his weapon to attack, but unfortunately, he was unprepared. His movements were a whole beat slower than Aiden's. By the time he picked up his weapon and prepared to attack, Aiden's long knife had already aimed at his neck. The sharp long knife directly cut through his throat, and smelly blood spurted out. The gnoll only felt that the strength in his body was quickly draining away. The weapon that could be easily swung became heavier and heavier. Whoosh! In the face of the attack, the troll reacted very quickly. When Aiden killed the 2 gnolls, his counterattack began. A javelin flew past in an instant. He only had time to turn his body sideways, and the javelin flew past his ear. The troll's movements were very fast. After throwing the javelin, the troll didn't care whether it hit the target or not. It just picked up its weapon and rushed forward. Aiden rolled on the ground and dodged the troll's follow-up attack. At the same time, he pulled out another scimitar and slashed at the troll's feet. After dodging several times, Aiden didn't panic at all. The scimitar in his hand kept blocking. The scimitar in his left hand slashed horizontally, and his right hand blocked the troll's weapon. Clang! A huge force came, and Aiden's body involuntarily retreated. The troll's strength was much higher than his. The scimitar in his left hand slashed at the troll's abdomen in an instant. Taking advantage of the huge force, Aiden took a few steps back and rushed forward again. The troll's self-healing ability was too strong. It was basically impossible to rely on bleeding to death. Aiden's two scimitars left after images. The troll roared and didn't show any weakness. The sound of metal colliding could be heard in the narrow cave. Countless scimitars intersected. Neither of them showed any weakness. Neither of them retreated. Wounds appeared on their bodies. Shadow raid. The flames flickered, alternating between light and darkness in the cave. At this time, Aiden's figure instantly merged with the shadows and appeared next to the troll. Aiden's eyes were cold. Without the slightest hesitation, the scimitar in his hand slashed at the troll's head. The troll didn't have time to dodge. It could only raise its hand to try to resist. Plop! A severed arm fell, and smelly blood spurted out. After losing an arm, the troll was no match for Aiden. After a short while, the other arm was also cut off. Aiden didn't directly kill the troll. After taking a breather and recovering his exhausted strength, he began to interrogate the troll. As a drow, Aiden was also proficient in all kinds of torture. It didn't take him much effort to get what he wanted. He cut off the troll's head and then threw the troll's body directly into the fire to burn. The troll's self-healing ability was very strong. In the absence of elemental spells, fire was the best way to kill them completely. In the dark night, the drow's figure moved quickly in the wilderness. The night gave him the best camouflage. The drow with night vision completely ignored the night. According to the information from the troll's mouth, the drow continued to investigate ahead. Bruce finally woke up after sleeping for a day and a night. Sulen personally pardoned his slave status. As a blacksmith, after experiencing the outbreak a few days ago, Bruce also successfully advanced to a master blacksmith. After gaining the status of a freedman, Bruce also wanted to express his loyalty to Sulen. Then, he became a new hero under Sulen. As a reward for Bruce's extraordinary weapon, Sulen gave him a house and 100 acres of farmland. With the property, Bruce's loyalty to Sulen directly rose to 90%. At the same time, this will also serve as a kind of publicity. Let the slaves work harder, and at the same time tell them that only hard work will change and they will get a better life. Bruce was still working in the blacksmith shop, but from now on, Sulen would have to pay him a monthly salary. Of course, if he could forge an extraordinary weapon, he would be rewarded accordingly. Since he was working by the piece, the more he worked, the more he would get. After learning about the treatment, Ross happily accepted it. With a master blacksmith in charge, Sulen can continuously obtain extraordinary weapons. After arranging Bruce's matters, Sulen went to Hathaway's laboratory. According to the time, the purple dragon halberd will be officially completed today. When he arrived at the laboratory, Hathaway has already prepared the purple dragon halberd. After enchantment, there are many more runes on the purple dragon halberd. The whole purple dragon halberd doesn't look as sharp as yesterday. Sulen reached out and picked up the purple dragon halberd. It was slightly cold to the touch, and at the same time, there was a flash of lightning. Purple dragon halberd, category, spear +4, item grade, advanced magic item, 100 refined steel, meteor iron, tungsten steel, and amethyst as raw materials, carefully forged with cryopterous blood quenching, and then enchanted by an alchemist to become a powerful magic weapon. Equipment requirement: strength 14 or above, additional effect, sharpness +3, toughness +3, armor penetration +3, enchantment, thunder power, slow, thunder power. Each attack will deal an additional 20 thunder damage. damage can be stacked. When the damage is dealt, the target will be paralyzed. If the target's constitution is unable to resist the effect, their body will be stiff for 1 to 3 seconds. When using thunder power, the damage of thunder power will be increased by 30%. At the same time, the consumption will be reduced by 30%. Slow, after being quenched with Cryopterus blood, each attack will deal an additional 5 ice damage and reduce the target's speed by 10%. Chapter 140. Su Len was very satisfied after looking at the stats of the item. This weapon was completely made for him. Sullen's thunder territory had been combined with the power of thunder. He was even more powerful now. Now, he had to face the troll tribe. What surprised Su Len was that Xian had returned with the caravan. The snow from 2 days ago did not cover the entire northern wasteland. At least, Xian and the caravan did not encounter it. As for why they were late, it was because there were too many people in the caravan. They had spent too much time arranging everything for the caravan. This time, the caravan had spent 15,000 kinnar and brought back more than 2,000 slaves. Other than the normal slaves, Xian had also bought more than 300 artisan slaves with various skills. These artisan slaves were bought with the help of the caravan that was working with the northern fortress. Otherwise, they would not have been able to buy them at all. A large number of refugees had also followed them here. After a few months of advertising, the northern fortress had become quite famous. Many refugees who could not survive were willing to follow the caravan to the northern fortress. Since there were too many people in the caravan this time, Xian had also spent a lot of kinnar to hire more than 200 mercenaries. He did not ask them to be good fighters. He just wanted them to help manage the refugees. In the end, the entire caravan had reached 4,000 people. Although the caravan brought back a lot of people, Su Luan had made preparations in advance, so there was not much chaos in the settlement work. All the slaves had been divided into groups, and each group was headed by a mercenary. Under the leadership of the group leader, the slaves were taken to the designated residence to rest. The refugees were divided according to their family. If they did not have a family, they would be divided into groups and assigned to their respective places. All of a sudden, there were 4,000 more people. The North Town Fort, which was spacious, immediately became crowded. The population of the North Town Fort tripled. However, Su Len would not complain about having too many people. The northern fortress would need at least 10,000 people to develop into a northern fortress city. Right now, it was only a large town at most. Because of the huge increase in population, many things had to be recalculated. For example, they had to divide more canteens. The 6,000 people were divided into 6 canteens according to where they lived. At the same time, they also needed to prepare the necessary facilities. Due to the increase in the number of people, Su Len began to expand the security team. This time, he planned to expand the security team to 150 people. Fortunately, the infrastructure of the town was not bad. Although it was a little crowded, at least everyone had a house to live in, and there was no need to sleep on the streets. Although they had brought a lot of people back this time, they still had to follow the hygiene rules of the North Town Fort. According to the medical standards of this world, the effectiveness of curing all kinds of infectious diseases was pitifully low. The North Town Fort didn't have any medicine either. If there was an infectious disease, it would be a miracle if half of the slaves and free people could survive. Everyone was led to the public bathroom to wash up. At the same time, everyone was asked to soak themselves in lime water for disinfection. The clothes that they had changed out of were also collected and burned. Then, everyone would be given a new set of clothes. Although there were a lot of demands, everyone accepted them honestly. When they entered the North Town Castle, the 2 ferocious heads hanging on the wall told everyone that the owner of this castle was not a good-tempered person. Some ignorant people wanted to cause trouble, but they were directly taken out by the security team to teach them a lesson. After cleaning up, someone would lead them to the canteen in groups for a meal. The whole process was busy, but orderly. The arrival of so many slaves and refugees had brought a lot of labor to the North Town Fort. Normally, labor would decrease in the winter. However, with so many people having nothing to do and having to provide food and warmth every day, it was definitely the biggest waste for Su Len, the capitalist who took advantage of every opportunity. Therefore, Su Len started the construction plan again. Of course, he had to take the weather into consideration. The increase in the number of people also led to more work in the territory. He also started to think about forming a system of officials to manage the town. However, he had yet to find a suitable person to be the mayor of the town. As for the ordinary officials, they were easy to deal with. The North Town Fort had always used a point system. The people who were responsible for recording points every day were actually qualified officials. After a few months, they had already familiarized themselves with the territory. Moreover, those who were greedy and had evil intentions had already been cleared out. As long as the system was improved, the officials only needed to do things according to the system. As for corruption and abuse of power, there was no need to worry about these problems at all. Sulan's territory was not a country with millions of people. It was only a small town with a few thousand people. It would not be easy to do something behind Sulan's back. Plus, with Chris there, they would not have the chance to do so. The sudden increase in the population caused some chaos in the North Town Castle, but it was quickly dealt with. The weather had completely cleared up after that. Even the snow outside had melted. The scouts kept sending news about the trolls. Su Len also began to prepare for the upcoming war. Because of the trolls' powerful regenerative ability, it was very difficult to kill them with normal physical attacks. Basically, all the adventurers knew that after a battle with the trolls, they had to burn all the limbs of the trolls. This was because with enough time, even a small piece of flesh could be regenerated into a complete troll. Of course, there was a limit to this regenerative ability. It would consume a lot of energy, and the regenerated trolls needed to be replenished as soon as possible. Moreover, only the largest piece of the troll's body could be regenerated in this way. The rest of the body would be burned to ashes after the troll's rebirth. It was also because of this almost immortal regenerative ability that the trolls were fearless on the battlefield. As for the situation where a troll was cut into countless pieces and then split into countless other trolls, this situation would not happen. The troll's reproduction was also through viviparous reproduction, not fission reproduction. Su Len was preparing to fight the trolls, so he needed to prepare a lot of things to ignite the fire. There were many pine trees outside the territory. This kind of plant was rich in oil and only needed a little fire to ignite it. Many native tribes used it to make torches. Su Len had people cut down a lot of pine trees and took out a lot of animal oil at the same time. There was no kerosene in the North Town Castle. Kerosene was mainly produced in the Desert Kingdom, so he had to use animal oil as a substitute. There was not enough animal oil, so Su Len had people distill the rum a few times to get high-purity alcohol. This was all used to ignite the fire to deal with the incoming trolls. It could be said that for the sake of this war, Su Len had already lost a lot of materials. Chapter 141. The Northtown Castle was like a war machine that began to operate in an orderly manner. Su Len also began to recruit new soldiers during this time. At the same time, the new soldiers who had been training in the barracks for more than a month were also given weapons. The Drow Aten came back. This Grand Knight-level rogue looked a little embarrassed. Some parts of his body were still wrapped in bandages, and there were blood stains on them. It seemed that this mission was not easy, but he also brought back the latest news about the troll tribe. You said that this tribe believes in nature spirits? Sulan's expression became serious. In fact, Su Len was not worried about dealing with the troll tribe. With his legendary level strength, 71 strong barbarians, and 2 teams of war spirits, it was enough to destroy the troll tribe. However, the natural spirits were a problem. Nature spirits were actually divine creatures. In fact, they were a kind of spirit. Most of them had legendary combat strength, and some even had the strength of demigods. If they merged with the divine title and divinity, then the nature spirit would be qualified to become a god. As long as they succeeded in raising the throne to the sky, they would become a new god. There was more than one such spirit. Some were even ancestral spirits. If the tribe kept the habit of worshipping their ancestors, then these ancestral spirits would become ancestral spirits. After the powerful warriors in the tribe died, their souls would be directly transformed into spirits. This kind of existence was a bit like a heroic spirit. This kind of belief could be found in the northern wilderness and the southern islands. Spirits had a weak divine power, so it was not easy to deal with them. Anything related to gods was not easy to deal with. It was very difficult to kill a spirit that had been worshipped for a long time. Yes, my lord. I saw their totems in their territory, and I felt a power that was very similar to divine spells from their worshippers, Aten said respectfully. Can you tell what kind of spirit it is? Sulen asked. Aten was a little embarrassed. Sorry, my lord. I can't get too close to those spirits, so I don't know the details of these spirits. Other than that, what else did you get this time? There are more than 600 trolls in this troll tribe, and about 1,000 gnolls and other cannon fodder. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't want more cannon fodder. The key was that they really couldn't afford to raise them. Because of the trolls' physique, they needed to eat a lot. Otherwise, they would starve to death. The reason for their migration was a lack of food. In previous years, all kinds of antelopes, giant antelopes, bison, and other creatures would migrate through the territory of the trolls. But this year, the number of migrating animals decreased a lot, which caused the troll tribe to have a shortage of food. Sulen was a little embarrassed when he heard the real reason for the lack of food. After all, he was the one who ordered the capture of the deer and antelopes. It was just that they were too ruthless, and in the end, the troll tribe had no food to eat. In the end, the trolls, who lacked food, turned their attention to Sulen's Northgard castle. After learning all kinds of information about the trolls, Sulen casually cast a healing spell on Aten. A green light shrouded Aten, and Aten's injuries quickly began to heal. In just a few seconds, Aten's injuries were completely healed. Thank you, my lord. Feeling the pain in his body disappear, Aten's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Aten, how have you been in the Northgard castle? Sulen said with a smile. He hesitated for a moment, and a hint of struggle flashed in his eyes. Then, he said with determination, It's good here, but Aten, I think you and your tribe should understand the danger you are facing. Sulen interrupted Aten's words. Without the protection of the gods, facing the pursuit of other drows, and the priest losing the ability to cast spells, and at the same time facing other monsters in the wilderness, your tribe will eventually decline. I know you drows don't trust humans. In fact, you are wary of all the races on the ground, but you must learn to change. During this time, you should know more about me and my territory. I hope your tribe can join my territory. As long as you can serve me and fight for me, I will promise you an endless supply of supplies, and even a normal life in my territory, Sulen said to the drows in front of him. Aten was a little silent. In fact, for him, he was inclined to join the Northgard castle and pledge his loyalty to Sulen. After all, he had seen the Northgard castle develop from a town of less than 1,000 people to what it was today. Later, he even killed a Cryopterus. It could be said that as long as he did not die prematurely, Sulen would soon become a famous figure on the continent. Joining his camp when he was not so strong was a very good choice for their tribe. However, the problem was that he was only a martial arts master. It was not up to him to decide the future of the tribe. Moreover, the drows belonged to a matriarchal society. Although the female drows had lost many of their spellcasting abilities, the traditions of their race were still maintained. They did not want to be controlled by a human. When Aten came to the Northgard castle as a military instructor, the drows had already had an internal discussion. In their imagination, maintaining independence and cooperating with the Northgard castle was the limit they could accept. However, Sulen would not accept this plan. Those drows had all kinds of power struggles and schemes all year round. They would not trust the promise of a human like Sulen. In fact, the group of female drows did not trust him at all. Otherwise, they would not have let a male contact the Northgard castle. Even at this time, the rule of female superiority among the drows had not changed. In fact, it was not only the drows, but also the ancient elves and half-elves. Although they were not completely dominated by females like the drows, females also occupied a dominant position. The male elves were not as lowly as the drows, like slaves. Your Excellency, you should know that as a male, I have no right to speak in the tribe, Aten said with a wry smile. I can swear loyalty to you, but I can only convey your intentions to the tribe. Please give them a little more time to think about it. Sulen smiled and said, of course. Aten requests to join your team. Sulen was in a good mood when he heard the system prompt in his ear. P.S. I've become an evil dragon, the king of the sewers. Pretty good. Also, please subscribe. My subscriptions are dropping too quickly. Please subscribe. I'm rolling on the street begging to subscribe. Chapter 142. Sulen agreed to Aten's application, and then he found out that Aten was also a hero. Name, Aten, loyalty, 83 race, half-drow, mixed, profession, rogue, level, middle grade extraordinary, grand knight, strength, 16 dexterity, 26 spirit, 14 constitution, 15 charm, 15 command, 78 features, talent middle grade dexterity, strong will, cunning, dark vision, tenacity, sturdy, discipline, firm faith, cruelty, perception, skillful hands, deception, intimidation. Master of martial arts, he is a master of martial arts in a drow family. His martial arts are superb, command +2, training +4, devout, he is a devout believer. Even if the god he believes in falls, his faith will not be shaken, will +3, skills, shadow jump, whirlwind slash, sneak, steal, poison, pick lock, trap, negotiation, evasion, performance, wilderness survival, reflex evasion, heavy hack, kidney attack, throat cut, back attack, shadow raid, shadow hide, detection, dual wielding weapons. Weapon proficiency, curved sword 165, dagger 163, bow 102, crossbow 105, throwing 83. Sulen was very satisfied with Aten's active loyalty. His addition could support the territory scouts. Sulen appointed him as an investigator of the North Castle. Welcome to the North Castle. Sulen said with a smile, Aten, this weapon is your reward for completing the investigation task well. Sulen took out the curved sword and a dagger that Hathaway made with the claws of the claw and handed it to him. After taking the weapon and testing it, Aten's eyes brightened. This magic weapon was much stronger than the one he used before. Thank you for your reward. I'm willing to clear any obstacles for you. Aten said, kneeling on one knee. Oh, get up. Sulen reached out and helped him up. You just came back. Go and have a rest first. Then go back to the Drow tribe tomorrow and tell them my request. It's up to them whether they want to agree or not. Sulen had made a decision. If the Drows chose to join the North Castle before the Troll War, he would give them the promised treatment, or even better. But if the Drows did not make a decision before the war, even if they joined the North Castle in the end, the conditions given by Sulen would be greatly reduced. Sulen had a better understanding of the Drows. This race also had the pride of the elves. It was impossible to make them yield just by using soft means. This method would even make them think that you were weak and easy to bully, and they would not join you. On the contrary, if you showed them strength that far exceeded theirs, they would respect you. The best way was to be both soft and tough. This group of Drows had reached the most difficult moment. If there was a strong person to help them, it was not impossible to conquer the whole tribe. Of course, nothing was absolute. He had already thought about it. After dealing with the trolls, if the Drows still had not made a decision, then he would go and reason with them. He, Sulen, had always convinced people with reason. After Aten left, Sulen began to think about the souls. The troll tribe had souls, and the power of the souls was very strong. The human wave tactic had no effect on them. After all, this thing was immune to any attack from non-rare weapons. If it was a soul with the strength of a demigod, then it would be immune to any attack from rare weapons below high-grade magic weapons. If the soul of the troll tribe was a demigod, then except for Sullen's purple dragon halberd, no weapon in the North Castle could hurt it. At that time, Su-Len would have to run away. However, this situation was very rare. After all, it was only a tribe of 600 trolls. This amount of faith could not support a demigod soul. The soul of the troll tribe was a legendary soul. Although this level of soul was powerful, Su-Len was not weak either. Although it had not been long since he became a legendary, he already had a territory. Many high-grade legendaries might not be able to awaken their own territory. There was still a big difference in strength between those who had a territory and those who did not. Although Aten had left, there were still 5 other scouts in the North Castle who were monitoring the trolls at all times. After a few days, the trolls finally set up camp 30 kilometers away from the North Castle. According to the scouts, the trolls should have taken a fancy to Sullen's territory. They wanted to directly occupy the North Castle as their new camp. After all, in the wilderness, the protection of the city walls was much better than those wooden bars. Under the dark night sky, Su-Len observed the simple camp that the trolls had built in the afternoon from afar. In addition to the 600 trolls, there were even more gnolls and kobolds in the tribe. During the day, Su-Len had brought people here to wait. This time, he did not bring many people. 71 barbarian warriors, 2 teams of war spirits, and a team of new spearmen and archers. Chris and Hathaway were both here. Su-Len had Sheriff Harrison stay in the North Castle with the security team. It could be said that he had brought out 90% of the military forces in the territory. Even if they won against the trolls, the North Castle would suffer heavy losses. Therefore, the best way to reduce the casualties was to ambush. He was a professional at ambushing. The night was getting darker. Su-Len and his men slowly approached the trolls' territory. They did not dare to go too close. The trolls also had night vision. If they made too much noise, the trolls would easily notice Su-Len and his men. By then, the ambush would become a full-on assault. In order to prepare for this battle, Su-Len had already brought out all the fire starters he had prepared. Everyone brought 4 bottles of oil and alcohol. Other than that, everyone was fully armed. The barbarians were all wearing steel half-body armor. The new soldiers were also wearing iron-plated armor. After being exposed to the cold wind for half a night, the discipline of the troops could be seen. The war spirits were still silent, but the new soldiers and barbarians were not. Stop and wait for orders. Su-Len shouted in a low voice, and then waved at the 5 scouts. You guys spread out and scout. See if there are any hidden sentries. The 5 scouts nodded. Then, their figures flashed, and they disappeared into the darkness. After waiting for about half an hour, the 5 scouts finally returned. After confirming that there were no hidden sentries, Su-Len and his men continued to sneak toward the trolls' tribe. This time, they were only 1 kilometer away from the trolls' camp. There was a high chance that they would be discovered if they tried to get close. No matter how careless the trolls were, they would still have hidden sentries here. Su-Len had Hathaway cast an invisibility spell on him. He quietly snuck in and prepared to take out the hidden sentries. Chapter 143. Su-Len was not a rogue, but as a legendary figure, it was a waste for him to sneak up on those hidden sentries. With the help of invisibility, his movements did not alert the hidden sentries. He opened the strategic map. Although the hidden sentries were hidden very well, the strategic map was a powerful cheat. As long as Su-Len came within 20 meters of them, these hidden sentries would appear on the map. Su-Len moved carefully in the wilderness. He did not approach the camp directly. Instead, he carefully circled around outside. Soon, many red dots appeared on the strategic map. Each red dot represented an enemy. After confirming all the hidden sentries, he quietly returned. After Su-Len marked the hidden sentries, he let the scouts follow him. It was around 2:00 in the morning, and the temperature was very low. It was also the time when the hidden sentries were the most sleepy. Su-Len quietly crept over from the side and saw a gnoll lying in a pit. The trolls did not keep watch personally. Instead, they let the gnolls be the hidden sentries. This was better and saved a lot of trouble. Sulen quietly sneaked over. When he was 5 meters away, he took out a short knife from the storage space and stepped on the gnoll's neck. A cold light flashed. The short knife in his hand pierced through the gnoll's heart from the back and then through the gnoll's chest. Scarlet blood quickly moistened the soil. Feeling that the gnoll's body was no longer twitching, Sulen gently pulled out the short knife and then moved on to the next target. Soon, with the actions of Sulen and the others, the red dots on the strategic map kept disappearing. After about half an hour, all the red dots on the strategic map disappeared. Sulen patrolled again. After not finding any new red dots, he returned to his previous position. After clearing all the hidden sentries, the next step was the surprise attack. Having been lurking outside for most of the night, the barbarian warriors were a little restless. They were impatient, but without Sulen's orders, they had to endure even if they were impatient. After Sulen returned, everyone immediately became alert. They knew that the battle was about to begin. "Let's go." Sulen did not say much. After patrolling around, he directly gave the order. Then everyone immediately moved. The barbarian warriors who had been waiting impatiently for a long time stretched their bodies and were the first to follow. Then the long spears and all the archers followed Chrissy and Hathaway. The team was still silent. Only some light footsteps could be heard. Hathaway cast silence and aura to minimize the sound of more than 100 people moving. As they got closer, the barbarian warriors at the front could already see the fire of the trolls' camp. Group haste. Magic light flashed and enveloped the surrounding barbarian warriors. Then, a few more magic lights appeared, and soon, all the warriors were buffed. Hathaway's, and Hathaway's, Hathaway's Hathaway. Hathaway, Hathaway's strength, Hathaway, and Hathaway. Shield arrow, shield. Elemental resistance, energy shield. After a series of buffs, Hathaway finally stopped. After passing through the empty space in front of the camp, Sulen's group arrived near the camp. Although there were no hidden sentries, there were still 2 trolls on the watchtower. Chrissy and Hathaway looked at each other, and then attacked at the same time. Charm. Hold monster. One of the trolls had been enticed by the succubus Chrissy, and the other had been unlucky enough to be controlled by Hathaway. Sulen stepped forward and directly cut off the connecting part of the wooden fence. He then pulled it out with both hands, and a 5-meter wide gap appeared. Everyone quietly snuck into the camp. Some awakened gnolls were just about to move when an arrow pierced their throats. All the archers had already occupied the commanding heights of the camp. The barbarians finally stopped suppressing themselves. They waved their sharp battle axes and charged towards the center of the camp. Raise morale. A ray of light spread out from Sulen's body, and the already high morale rose again. Barbarians, charge with me. The rest of you, set the fire. I'll take care of the troll chieftain and shaman. After making a simple arrangement, Sulen took the lead and charged in. The barbarians all activated their berserk state, and their already powerful strength increased once more. One after another, pyromancy bottles were thrown onto the tents, and then blazing flames. The gnolls were even more unlucky. Because it was winter, their fur had grown thicker, and sparks flew everywhere, directly igniting their fur. Sulen had already taken out the purple dragon halberd. The 3-meter-long halberd was invincible, and all the enemies in front of it were cut in 2 by the crescent moon halberd. Every attack was accompanied by large amounts of lightning, and the injured parts were directly electrocuted into charcoal. The formation of the barbarian warriors had long been messed up. They all activated their berserk state, then charged forward with their giant axes in their hands. Each one of them was like a large windmill, and wherever they passed, corpses were strewn everywhere. The barbarians did not show any mercy to these trolls and gnolls. They cut to their heart's content, and they did not stop to catch their breath. They just charged forward. Sulen advanced quickly, and trolls constantly woke up and rushed forward. However, although these trolls were strong, they were still far from Sulen's strength. If it were not for their powerful regeneration ability, they would have been dead long ago. Even so, a large number of trolls had lost the ability to resist. Profound Ice Slash. Seeing the densely packed monsters in front of him, Su Len directly activated his energy, and ice blades appeared one after another. He then rushed forward in an instant. Wherever the 3 ice blades passed, all the monsters were unable to resist at all and were all cut into pieces. Broken corpses and blood covered the ground. Summon demons. Roar. A blood-red teleportation gate suddenly appeared in the camp, and in the next second, a huge figure walked out of the gate. The Vrock roared loudly and rushed towards the monsters. The teleportation gate did not disappear, and immediately after, 4 figures appeared. These demons were covered in a layer of flames. They were the flame demons of the abyss. After the demons appeared, they also rushed towards the surroundings. The gnolls were simply no match for them, and they were set on fire as soon as they got close. The war spirit and the 2 teams of recruits kept throwing bottles of fire into the camp. The glass bottles were filled with oil or alcohol, and they were thrown out. When the bottles broke, the oil or alcohol inside would instantly ignite a large area. The entire camp was already burning. The archers attached flaming objects to their arrows, and after igniting them, they kept shooting. More and more tents were set on fire, and even the trolls with powerful regeneration abilities were burned into charcoal. Chapter 144. The flames lit up the night sky red. More and more trolls and gnolls woke up, and the barbarians started to feel the pressure as well. Dozens of archers were standing on the tower and continuously shooting arrows. They had already attracted the attention of the trolls. Soon, a small group of trolls charged towards the archers with shields on their heads. Hathaway snapped her fingers, and the ground the trolls were about to advance on suddenly became as smooth as a mirror. The battlefield was chaotic in the night, and the trolls didn't even see the change under their feet. One after another, they fell. Just as they were about to faint from the fall, a fireball came crashing down. Boom! With a loud bang, flames shot everywhere. The grease on the ground instantly ignited into flames that were several meters tall, surrounding all the trolls. Hathaway's special oil spell made the flames even fiercer. A few trolls rolled out of the flames and rolled on the sand, trying to put out the flames. However, the flames were like maggots that ate away at their bones. The intense pain made the trolls go crazy. The sneak attack was very effective. The entire camp was in chaos, but as some of the war trolls and savage trolls started to gather their troops, some of the trolls had already completed their formation and started to counterattack. The first to suffer casualties were the spearmen. These trolls didn't attack the barbarians. With their steel half-body armor, the powerful barbarians weren't easy to deal with. Although the trolls caused chaos in the camp, they were far inferior to the spearmen and archers who were constantly setting fire. Teams of trolls braved the fire arrows and launched surprise attacks from all directions. Surin's lack of manpower was exposed at this time. Although he had Hathaway and Chrissy's help, they simply couldn't deal with attacks from multiple directions. Javelins flew over. A few spearmen who couldn't dodge in time were pierced through and nailed to the ground. Blood poured out of their mouths. This kind of injury was incurable for humans. Hathaway also received special treatment. 3 or 4 javelins were shot from different directions. Some of them were deflected by the force field on the surface of Hathaway's body. Only one of them broke through the force field and fiercely hit the energy shield. The energy shield flickered a few times but didn't shatter. After being attacked, Hathaway cast a flying spell on herself and flew into the air. After making sure that she was safe, Hathaway released one spell after another. She even threw out a few spell scrolls. For a time, lightning, acid, fire, and all kinds of elemental energies kept bursting out, killing a large number of trolls that had rushed over. Su Len waved his purple dragon halberd and killed a few trolls in front of him. He was a bit annoyed by the deaths of his subordinates. When he saw that there were still many trolls gathering around him, he activated the energy in his body again. Red flame. A scorching aura erupted from his body, and light red fire elements with a temperature of several hundred degrees spread out in all directions with him as the center. Everywhere it passed, the wood of the tents and even the knolls were ignited by the flames. It was as if countless torches had been ignited. The flames rose, and the entire camp was burning. As soon as he finished casting the spell, he heard the sound of something breaking through the air. Sulen waved his halberd and deflected 2 javelins. He then looked in the direction where the javelins had come from. He saw a much taller troll charging at him. Without any words, the 2 sides started fighting. With a roar, the troll brandished his giant axe and rushed towards Su Luan. The sharp axe blade swept towards Su Luan with an indomitable momentum. Clang! 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 Sulen didn't fight head-on. He quickly moved and dodged. As he dodged, he kept swinging his halberd at the troll in front of him. But to his surprise, the purple dragon halberd didn't do much damage to him. There was a strange force field around him. This force field was very strong. Even the lightning damage was ignored. Sulen's eyes flashed. Ancestral spirit possession? Ancestral spirits were the most common kind of natural spirits. Usually, they would be encountered in native tribes with a long history. Ancestral spirits were most prevalent in the tropical rainforests in the south of the continent. There were many primitive tribes there, and almost every tribe had their own ancestral spirits. They were energy life forms. Some were similar to the saints of the gods, but most of them were not as strong as the saints. But it was said that there were some powerful ancestral spirits in the depths of the rainforests that had reached the boundary of the gods. Most of these ancestral spirits were once strong in the tribe. After they died, they were worshipped as gods. Some powerful tribes could even create several ancestral spirits. These ancestral spirits could fight alone or possess the bodies of strong people in the tribe. None of them were easy to deal with. Boom! A huge force swept across. This troll, who was more than 3 meters tall, was very strong. After being possessed by the ancestral spirit and being blessed with many spells, it was even stronger than Sulen. And with the force field around him, even low-level magic weapons couldn't hurt him. Only the purple dragon halberd could break through the force field and leave wounds on his body. But under the possession of the ancestral spirit, the troll's rationality was completely suppressed. It was replaced by the consciousness of the ancestral spirit. He didn't care about the wounds on his body at all. Even vital attacks were ineffective. After dodging, Sulen suddenly felt his body become heavy. Then he made a mistake. His body didn't dodge, and the ancestral spirit's axe came down on his head. Sulen hurriedly blocked with his halberd. Clang! With a loud bang, Su Luan's body was directly sent flying several meters away. Then, he had no time to turn around and roll to avoid the fierce wind stirred up by the ancestor soul's giant axe. The purple dragon halberd in his hand instantly burst out all the power, which directly pushed the troll back more than 10 meters. Thunder Domain, activate. A powerful energy instantly burst out from Su Luan's body, and countless thunderclouds appeared in the sky, and a large amount of lightning flashed. Boom! The dull thunder resounded through the earth, drowning out all the sounds in the camp. Countless people looked there in horror, only to see a bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket striking down from the thunderclouds. The area 15 meters around Su Luan instantly turned into a world of thunder. All the trolls and jack-o'-lanterns within this range were turned into a pile of charcoal in just a few breaths. Countless bolts of lightning flashed on his body, and crackling sounds were constantly heard. Su Luan's vigorous body seemed to be the incarnation of the thunder god at this moment. He raised his hand, and the purple dragon halberd flew directly into his hand. Ancestral spirit, your time of death has come. The troll roared, and all the muscles on his body bulged. At the same time, he roared, the descendants of Augumon fear nothing. Chapter 145. Sulen activated his domain. Ordinary people could no longer approach the battlefield. Roar! The troll roared into the sky. The death of a large number of tribe members was a huge blow to the ancestor soul. The ancestor soul and the tribe were interdependent. If the population of the tribe died out, without the sacrifice, the ancestor's soul would gradually decline without believers. If he didn't find a tribe that was willing to worship him in time, it wouldn't be long before this ancestor's soul disappeared. Su Luan's behavior was completely cutting off the roots of the ancestor's soul. Boom! The heavy axe crashed down, and even the earth seemed to tremble. Su Lan did not retreat. He pushed off the ground and rushed forward. The purple dragon halberd was completely covered in lightning. The halberd swept out and hit the ancestor's soul directly. The lightning and the protective force field on the ancestor's soul's body clashed violently. This time, the halberd successfully tore through the force field and smashed into the ancestor's soul's body. Boom! Lightning shot out in all directions. A muffled thunder exploded in the camp. The troll possessed by the ancestor's soul was sent flying dozens of meters and crashed into a wooden fence. The lightning covered him, and the paralyzing effect made it impossible for him to get up. Then, with a flash of lightning, Su Lan appeared beside the ancestor's soul. He did not give the ancestor's soul a chance to fight back. The halberd in his hand stabbed into the ancestor's soul's heart. Even if the troll ancestor's soul did not have a fatal injury, he did not believe that such an injury would not affect him. Even if it was to heal injuries, it would still consume energy. The purple dragon halberd pierced through the energy field and went straight into the troll's chest. The troll's armor didn't have any resistance, and it was pierced right through. The 1-foot-long spear pierced through the troll's heart, but to Su Luan's surprise, no blood flowed out. The power of the ancestor spirit had already caused some strange changes to the troll's body. Roar! The troll ancestor's soul, who had regained his mobility, did not care about the wound in his chest. He swung his axe towards Su Lan. Clang! Clang! Every time the two of them collided, a large amount of lightning would burst out. The surrounding knolls were directly burned into charcoal by the lightning. The fierce confrontation was like a storm, and the surroundings were like an earthquake. The ground was cracked everywhere, and all the fences collapsed. The purple dragon halberd swept horizontally. Lightning flashed, and the huge recoil forced both of them to take a few steps back. As soon as they regained their footing, the ancestor's soul troll rushed up again. The heavy two-handed axe carried a huge force as it swept towards his face. As Su Lan steadied himself, he also made his move. His right leg suddenly rose, and under the cover of a large amount of lightning, he kicked upwards, aiming for the giant demon's wrist. His right hand gripped the purple dragon halberd tightly. A cold light flashed, and then the spear shot out like a dragon. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Su Lan felt the cold blade of the axe sweep past his face. Then, the troll let out an angry roar. The purple dragon halberd pierced one of the troll's eyes. Su Lan leaned to the side to dodge the axe, and his whole body was immediately sent flying. The ancestor soul troll's attack just now was completely calculated. It could ignore the injury, but Su Lan couldn't. Su Lan grinned, and there was no fear in his eyes. The ancestor soul troll was missing an eye, and it was all thanks to the purple dragon halberd. Seeing Sullen's expression, the ancestor soul troll was even angrier. At this point, both of them had started to fight with their lives. Su Luan's silhouette flickered as he directly lunged forward. Accompanied by a roar of rage, the giant axe swept out horizontally, while Su Luan's halberd swept out horizontally. Arcs of lightning shot out, and an immense force was transmitted from their weapons. The giant devil ancestor spirit didn't seem to care at all. It forcibly endured the damage from the lightning, wanting to exchange injuries with Su Luan. Amidst the chaos, Su Luan gritted his teeth and sent out a knee strike. However, the troll wasn't weak either. He threw out a punch, and Su Luan and the troll crashed into each other like two trains. They both tumbled backwards. Thunder's fury. A bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, and it hit the purple dragon halberd. The lightning surrounding the purple dragon halberd became even brighter, and the 3-meter-long purple dragon halberd looked like a lightning spear made of lightning. Su Lan waved the purple dragon halberd and rushed up, and a terrifying energy burst out in an instant. Bolts of lightning danced wildly, and the lightning on the purple dragon halberd exploded the moment it touched the enemy. The powerful lightning power directly tore apart the energy field on the ancestor soul troll's body. The lightning power that had been accumulated to the extreme suddenly burst out, and the ancestor soul troll's body was charred black, and its body became stiff. Then the purple dragon halberd swept horizontally, and the sharp crescent blade tore through the troll's skin, and chopped towards its neck. Half of the ancestor soul troll's neck had been cut off, and it recovered from its stiff state. Its wounded arm held the long halberd that was covered in lightning, blocking the purple dragon halberd from cutting off its head. The powerful lightning instantly charred its arm. Just as Su Len was about to pull back his halberd and sweep again, the ancestor soul troll in front of him suddenly let out a deafening roar. War roar. A sound wave mixed with a strange energy swept over, and Su Len only felt his ears ring. His entire body became sluggish for a moment, and he felt a wave of dizziness. This roar was like a wave, and with the ancestor soul troll as the center, it rapidly expanded outwards. Everywhere it passed, it attacked indiscriminately. The two sides that were fighting felt dizzy, and their bodies were stiff. Those who were close enough to the ancestor soul troll even had blood flowing out of their ears and noses. Su Len only felt dizzy for a moment before he recovered from that state. Although it was only for a moment, it still gave him a splitting headache. He was the closest to the ancestor soul troll, so he had to endure the strongest sound wave attack. If it weren't for Sullen's powerful physique and various buffs, he definitely wouldn't have been able to endure that attack so easily. However, although it was only for a moment, Su Len, who had just recovered from the shock, had no time to dodge the ancestor soul troll's attack. He could only block it with his arm. The huge force sent Su Len flying a few meters away. He felt a swelling pain in his arm, but it didn't break. The ancestor soul troll had been severely injured, and its energy had been severely depleted. Its aura had dropped by a lot, and even the wound on its neck hadn't healed. Take its life while it's down. After spending so much effort, Su Len didn't intend to let all his previous efforts go to waste. Although he had used up a lot of energy in the battle just now, it was clear that his condition was much better than the ancestor soul troll. Su Len grinned, and his figure rushed forward again. He reached out his arm and picked up the purple dragon halberd again, and a powerful lightning instantly enveloped the area. There were no tricks, and it was all a head-on clash. He raised the purple dragon halberd and swept it horizontally. Bang, bang, bang. Lightning exploded, and electric snakes swam. The whole world seemed to be illuminated. The two continued to exchange blows, and energy burst forth. However, this time, the ancestor soul troll couldn't hold on any longer. Under Sullen's continuous attacks, it was defeated again and again. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.